Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the what if. 31. Royal Shichibukai, Sir Monkey D. Luffy. After lots of resting, an interview and a huge feast, where the king and his royal guards got a real taste of what a pirate banquet feels like, the Straw Hat Pirates were invited to the royal bath. Zoro was washing Chopper's back, while Luffy and Usopp messed around. The king simply sat down with his legs in the water. "Hey, where's the girls' bath?" Sanji asked with a perverted expression and poked Agaram with his elbow. Agaram slapped Sanji's hand away angrily. "You idiot," he yelled. "Like I'd tell that to someone like you. Vivi-sama is in there." "Come on, don't be so stingy," Sanji replied. "It's right over that wall," Cobra announced and pointed. "Your Majesty, you bastard," Agaram yelled. "Oh, I like your style," Usopp told him. Everyone quickly ran over to the wall. "This feels so good," they heard Nami say as they looked over the wall. "I wonder if any ships out there have baths this big on them." "I'm sure there are," Vivi replied. "The sea is so vast. We've seen giants, dinosaurs, sakura bloom in the land of snow. The sea must contain many more unbelievable things." "I have to agree. I'm sure civilian cruise ships as well as a few pirate ships have them," Robin added. "Wait a minute, what is everyone doing up there?" Vivi asked as she turned around and finally noticed Cobra, Sanji, Usopp, Agaram, the hypocrite eyelashes, Chopper and Luffy, all peeking at them. "Those guys," Nami said and sighed. "Alright, it'll be 100.000 berry each." She walked over from the bath towards them. The other two girls looked at her in confusion. "Happiness punch," she announced and opened her bath robe, revealing her features. Everyone fell down from a nosebleed, except Chopper, who looked in confusion, and Luffy, who laughed and did a thumbs up. Then he quickly jumped down to the other guys and wiped his own, less noticeable nosebleed. "Nami-san," Vivi yelled with a blush, while Robin just chuckled. "Why wasn't he affected?" Nami asked the other two. They shrugged. "Maybe he's gay," Nami concluded on her own after a few moments. Luffy, who was listening from the other side of the wall, smirked. Then soon, the rest of the guys managed to stand up, a few of them with hearts in their eyes. "Maybe he just isn't as perverted," Robin suggested. But then everyone was interrupted from their thoughts by squeaking. A bat made its way into the baths. Luffy's and Cobra's eyes widened upon seeing this, but nobody else knew what to think upon seeing this. "It's from the world government," Cobra told them with a shaken voice. He took the message from the bat and read the writing on the envelope. He gave it to Luffy, who took it and looked to everyone in surprise. "TT, that's bad," Usopp stuttered with a panicked expression. "They're probably saying we should prepare ourselves to die or something." "Don't be ridiculous," Sanji yelled at him. "We saved one of their countries. There is no way it says that." Zoro just stared at the envelope, while Chopper looked at what Luffy will do. "What's that, guys?" Nami yelled from the other side of the wall. Luffy got a message directly from the government. Usopp yelled. "What?" All three of the girls came running to the men's bath, much to the pleasure of a few perverted men, namely all of them laughing face. Is it true, Luffy-san?" Vivi stuttered. Luffy nodded. Then he turned his attention to the envelope. It said, "To Monkey D. Luffy. From Navy Headquarters at Marineford, the World Government." Luffy slowly began unwrapping the paper. Robin's eyes were wide. "It can't be," she thought. "It's not possible." Cobra had much the same conclusion as Robin, but the rest of them didn't really know what it could be. Luffy's eyes widened in shock as he read the letter. Monkey D. Luffy, Captain of the Straw Hat Pirates. Also known as Straw Hat Luffy. Due to your recent defeat of the traitorous ex-Royal Shichibukai, Sir Crocodile, also known as the leader of the organization of Baroque works as well as the saving of Arabasta, a member kingdom of the world government, you have been deemed worthy to take the now vacant seat as one of the Royal Shichibukai. If you accept this offer, your bounty and the bounties of your crew will be revoked and you will be able to operate as one of the only 7 government-sanctioned pirate warlords. You will be granted protection by the government as well as several other privileges, which include the use of the government exclusive to Rai Current, the ability to request transportation on any government vessel, the ability to start earning money the legitimate way as well as by hunting other non-Shichibukai pirates as well as many others, which may be discussed. You may act in any part of the sea, but you must stay within the Grand Line. You may leave it for short periods of time if required. Of course, in return for your position, you will be required to stop any activities that go directly against the laws of the world government. In addition, you will be required to obey any direct orders from the head of the government or the Navy. If you should go against government laws, disobey your orders, be publicly defeated or humiliated or resign yourself, your bounty will once again become active and you'll be hunted once more. Should you accept, your position will be given immediately and your presence will be required at Navy headquarters at Marineford to discuss your personal agreement with the government. You will become known as the Royal Shichibukai, Sir Monkey D. Luffy. If you are unable to come to the meeting by your own means, a government boat will be dispatched to pick you up. Becoming one of the government-sanctioned pirates is a great honor and is rarely given to new players in the pirate world such as yourself. However, you have proven yourself worthy first with your actions in East Blue and now in the Kingdom of Arabasta, here on the pirate graveyard. As a result of your actions, you have gained a reputation for yourself practically overnight. You should also feel honored that while in normal circumstances a meeting is called between the Navy and the Shichibukai to determine the new member, the heads of the government themselves have decided to forego all that and invite you immediately. Should you refuse our very generous offer, your bounty will be updated to fit with your newly recorded level of strength and you will be hunted down like any other pirate. We wait for your answer and hope you'll make the right choice. Vice Admiral Suru, on behalf of the Fleet Admiral of the Marine HQ and the World Government. Luffy started laughing almost hysterically upon reading the entire letter. Zoro pulled the note from his hand and read it. I can't believe it. He stuttered. Everyone looked at him, now really on edge. What? Nami asked nervously. Zoro looked at them. Luffy, he started. I've been invited to become a Shichibukai. Shishishishi. Luffy interrupted. Everyone's jaw dropped on the ground. WHAAAAT. 2 days later, somewhere in the New World. Gahahaha. I can't believe this guy. Shanks laughed loudly and threw a newspaper at the ground. Didn't you just complain you had a hangover, red-haired? Dracula Mahawk asked in an annoyed voice. I feel much better now, Hawkeyes. Shanks replied. Of course you do, Hawkeyes replied. Shanks nodded. So, did you teach him to be so dramatic, red hair? Mahawk asked. I didn't teach him anything. Luffy is crazy enough on his own. Shanks told him. Mahawk looked at him oddly. Really? Because that sounds a lot like your handiwork, red-haired. The Shichibukai replied. It does, Shanks asked. Mahawk sighed in annoyance. Shanks just laughed and started drinking from a cup of sake. Anyway, your friend Straw Hat has been offered a Shichibukai seat. Mahawk told him. Shanks spat out his sake and looked at his rival in shock. Then he started laughing again. Do you think he accepted? Mahawk interrupted. Shanks looked at him like he grew 3 heads and continued laughing. Gahahaha. You must be stupid, Hawkeyes. He finally replied, after a few moments of laughing and annoying the Shichibukai. I don't want to be told that by someone like you, Akagami. Mahawk replied and sighed. Did you also read the interview? Yes, I think Arabasta loves him right now. He's probably treated like a celebrity there. Gahahaha. Shanks told him. By the way, why do you have a subscription to the Arabasta newspaper, Taka no Mi? The Shichibukai sighed. Didn't I already tell you twice? He asked. I visited Alubarna once and slept in a hotel. Oh, right, Shanks interrupted. Some bandits caused trouble and interrupted your nap so you beat them and then they gave you the subscription in thanks. Exactly, Mahawk replied. Now, give me pen and paper. I need to write Anchor a letter. Shanks commanded. Several people groaned. Did you have to shout, boss? My head will explode. One of them complained. Gahahaha. Wimps. On the floor next to Shanks was the Arabasta newspaper, with the photo of Luffy, Vivi, the King and Koza standing next to each other on the cover along with the photo of Luffy and Ensign Tashigi facing each other with Crocodile on the ground between them. Underneath the 2 photos it was written in large, bold letters, the war is over. The first 4 pages of the newspaper dealt exclusively with the war, detailing the actions of the rebellion, Royal Army, Crocodile and lastly Vivi and Luffy, who got most of the glory for stopping the war. On the 5th page began the interview. The interview with Monkey D. Luffy, the man who stopped the war. Monkey D. Luffy, the pirate captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, also known as Straw Hat Luffy, is the man who brought Princess Nefertari Vivi back to Arabasta and is along with his crew responsible for the end of hostilities in our country. He has personally defeated the ex-royal Shichibukai responsible for the war, the man we believed was our hero, Sir Crocodile. So tell me, Luffy-san, how does it feel like to be our country's hero? Now let me stop you right there. I'm not a hero. Like my crew, you don't even know what a hero is. Let's say you have a piece of meat. Pirates will eat the meat, but a hero will take the meat and share it. I want all the meat. So I can't be a hero, can I? I'm right. So then how do you explain your selfless actions that helped save Arabasta and many of its citizens? For that you should mostly thank Vivi, the princess of Arabasta. How did you meet the princess anyway? At first we were enemies. She actually worked for Crocodile's group, the Ballet Works, or whatever it was. Its name was Baroque Works. Right, she worked for him, trying to find as much information about his group as possible. But, when she found out who the boss was, she was targeted by his assassins. I think it was the Mr. Five pair. Both of them had devil fruits. So why did you save her? For money, first. Laughs, my navigator really loves money, so she thought we'd get a lot of it, if we saved her. I agreed, because money can get you meat. Right, so what changed? Well, after Zoro beat up the two agents and I saved her, she told us about her country and the war, and by accident she told us that it was Crocodile's fault. By accident. The princess revealed his name by accident. Laughs, yep. So then we had no choice but to take her aboard, since we were immediately targeted ourselves. But after a while we became friends and nakama. So why did you decide to help her save the country other than for being a hero? I'm not a hero and my crew are not heroes, because we didn't save the country for the people, or the king, or to stop people from dying or any other heroic reason like that. Then why did you? For her, Vivi, one of our own. She was always sad, always worrying about her country. She rarely ever smiled and I couldn't stand that. Why you did all that to make a friend that you knew for only a few weeks smile? It doesn't matter how much time you know a friend if the friendship is real. And a nakama is more than that. It's family, practically. If only more pirates would think like that. Now I'd like to ask you how you felt when you were standing between the two armies. Were you scared? Not really, and I'll tell you why. First of all, because I thought it was so cool to be doing that. Second, I knew that most of the soldiers wouldn't fight anymore. And third, I have the coolest devil fruit ever, so I wasn't too worried. What about Crocodile? Did you feel afraid while facing one of the Shichibukai? More importantly, how did you beat him, especially since he has a powerful Logia devil fruit ability? I wasn't scared, since I knew what I was facing and how to win. Sir Crocodile has the Logia devil fruit Suna no Mi, which is powerful, but has a major weakness, which is water. So, by making him wet, I was able to weaken him and defeat him. Without it, I would probably be defeated pretty easily, since I don't really know how to even fight Logia devil fruit users in general. But using the water and Crocodile's own overconfidence against him, I was able to defeat him pretty fast and easy, considering how powerful he is. I still got wounded though, but nothing too serious. You mentioned you have eaten one of the rare devil fruits. Which one? When did you eat it and is it better than the rest, and if it is, why? When I was 7, a great pirate came into my village. He had the Gomu Gomu no Mi and I ate it on accident. It literally turned my whole body into rubber. It's not nearly as destructive as many of the other devil fruits, but it's a great devil fruit anyway. I'm often told that my devil fruit is useless or stupid, but those people often have no idea at all of what I can do with it. I wouldn't change it for any other. So, you put Arabasta under your protection. What exactly do you want in return? Nothing. I didn't demand anything, but there are things I expect from this island. Firstly, I expect to be safe here. I don't want any Marines chasing me while I'm here. Secondly, I expect a place to stay and supplies whenever I stop here. The king has already promised all of that to us. Are there any other places under your protection? L. Yes, Konami Islands in East Blue and Drum Island here on the Grand Line. My home island doesn't need protection though, as it's already under the direct supervision of a trustworthy Marine. What is your relationship with Marines in general? L. I never attack first, but Marines seem to be exceptionally hostile towards any and all pirates, so I often have no choice but to fight them. I don't hate them for that, but I do find it very annoying. What about civilians and other pirates? L. I never attack civilians, but I would attack other pirates if we needed money. Is there anything you'd like to say to the people of Arabasta? L. You are lucky to have such a king and princess. You rarely see rulers who actually care this much about their people. Actually, not 2 weeks ago, I've kicked the very hated King Wapple out of the Drum Kingdom. I see. Is there anything you'd like to say in general? L. Live without regrets. Follow your dream if you have one. And lastly, if you hurt one of my Nakama or friends or any island under my protection, you'd better pay for your funeral. Thank you, Monkey D. Luffy. L. No problem. Somewhere else in the New World on the Moby Dick. The Moby Dick journeyed towards one of the islands under their protection. Like I said, complete wimps, yoi. Marco announced as he showed the newspaper around. On the front page was the title, The Straw Hat Pirate Defeated Shichibukai Crocodile and Stopped the War in Arabasta. Garararara. I have to agree with Marco. Whitebeard announced with his booming voice. Pops, you traitor. Sabo yelled. His captain just laughed louder. So this is your little brother, Sabo? Vista asked as he saw the photo of Luffy facing Tashigi on the front page. Sabo sighed. Yeah, that's Luffy, he told them. He's pretty cool, cooler than the other two brothers. Haruta announced in a cold matter-of-fact voice, without any hint of mercy. Hey, that hurts, Sabo yelled at her. Hey, Haruta, that's pretty mean. Jozu told her. Ace is probably freaking out right now, yoi. Marco suggested and laughed some more. Sabo sighed. You'd be freaking out too if your little brother did something this crazy. Sabo told him. Marco chuckled. I detect jealousy. Marco chirped out. I'm not jealous, Sabo yelled. Anyway, Marco continued. It says here that he's been sent a Shichibukai invitation. Sabo's jaw and a few others crashed into the ground. Are you freaking kidding? He yelled. Ace only got one when he was already in the New World. So you are jealous. Ha ha ha, Marco teased. I'm not jealous. At Navy Headquarters, Marineford Fleet Admiral's office. GAAARP. Sengoku yelled furiously. The Vice Admiral crashed through the door, nearly throwing it off the hinges. What is it, Sengoku? He asked. It's your damn grandson again, Garp. Sengoku told him with gritted teeth. Bwahahaha. What did he do this time? Garp asked him, amused. Not only did he defeat Crocodile, the Fleet Admiral started. Bwahahaha. That's my grandson, Garp interjected. And stopped the war, he continued in irritation. So, my grandson is not only strong, but cool too. Garp interrupted again with a smirk on his face. Sengoku gritted his teeth in annoyance at his friend's antics. And made sure that every single person in the world now knows that a warlord has been defeated, but, he continued. So, I don't see the problem. Garp interrupted. Garp, just shut up, Sengoku yelled again and sighed. He also just had to refuse the Shichibukai position. Biwahahahahaha. Shut up, Sengoku shouted and punched the roaring Vice Admiral on the head. Just look at this. He even dared to insult and threaten us in his reply. The Fleet Admiral threw a piece of paper at his friend. Garp caught it and started reading. He started laughing at the first sentence. 2. Navy HQ and the world government. Hi, Seagull Asan and the rest of you jerks. I've become a pirate because of 2 reasons, and those are my freedom and my dream. If I accepted your stupid little title offer, I'd lose both. Plus any respect I may have gained. While I am flattered that the government thinks I'm dangerous, I can assure you that I have no intention of attacking any of government or civilian ships, and I certainly don't intend on raiding any government-owned or protected islands. But, since that doesn't matter to you and you want to kill me anyway for flying a pirate flag and beating up those 2 Marine officers who were corrupt anyway, as well as beating up pirates, which was supposed to be your job. Seagull Awesome, so I thought I'd give you a little warning in advance. I'll tolerate any attacks on the Straw Hat Pirates as a whole, since that's your job, which you suck at by the way, but should any member of our group be targeted individually or should any of our islands be threatened, we will respond. I hope you find the replacement Shichibukai soon. Monkey D. Luffy, future Pirate King. P.S. Say hi to Gramps. Seagull Awesome. Gwahahaha. Ga Arp. Somewhere in paradise. Ace was on his tiny little boat and was heading to the next island, when a news-coup bird dropped above him and offered him a newspaper. Ace stopped his boat and gave the bird money and took one of the newspapers. Upon seeing the headline, he blinked a few times to confirm what he was seeing. Then his eyes traveled to the large picture of Luffy, Tashigi and Crocodile. Finally he looked below the picture and noticed the writing. About the War of Arabasta, Crocodile's involvement and Straw Hat Luffy, who stopped the 2 warring factions by standing between them. His jaw finally crashed into the boat. 2 days later, a royal guard entered the Straw Hat Pirate's room. Someone is requesting to talk to you. He said his name is Bon Chan. He told them. In his hand he carried a silver platter with a Den Den Mushi. Luffy immediately took it. Moosh moosh. Hello. Ga ha ha ha. It's me. Ga ha ha ha. A voice asked. Robin's eyes widened. Why is Mr. 2 Bon Clay calling us? She thought. Oh, it's you. Luffy said. What do you want? Era. It's this, the voice of Mugi-chan. Bentham asked. You're so strong. I was so surprised. You beat Zero-chan. Oh, yes, don't go calling me Mr. 2. If the Marines find about this, I'll be in super big trouble. He just said it himself. Chopper yelled. Just spit it out, commanded Zoro. Oh right, I took your little ship, Mr. 2 announced. WHAAAT. Everyone yelled with shark teeth. Asshole, that's not funny, said Usopp. Where are you now? I'm on your buoy, Bon Clay replied. Damn it, Sanji cursed. Of all the annoying bastards. You've got it all wrong. All wrong, Bentham interrupted. Aren't we friends? Gahaha, gahaha. A few minutes later. So that's why we're leaving. Luffy finished. He turned to Vivi, who stared at him, saddened by the news. Hey, everyone, she asked. What should I do? Listen, Vivi, Nami told her. We'll give you 12 hours to think about it. After we take our ship back on the Sandora River, then exactly at noon tomorrow, we'll swing the ship past the eastern harbor once. We won't be able to drop anchor, so that'll be your only chance if you decide to continue adventuring with us. If so, we'll celebrate. Like pirates. You're the princess of this kingdom, so this is the best invitation we can give you. Sanji told her. Why do you even have to leave already, everyone? Vivi asked them. Father has forbidden chasing you guys in the kingdom. But Marines can still stop us on the sea. Zoro told her. They don't exactly have to follow the king's commands on the ocean. And they won't. They'll try to get the ship. Luffy nodded. Nami's eyes twitched. That's all because this guy, she said in an irritated voice and bonked Luffy on the head. Refused the Shichibukai position. Moron. Sorry, Nami, Luffy told her, but I don't want to take orders from anyone. Then Robin approached Vivi. Princess San, I wanted to apologize. Robin started and bowed her head. I've caused you a lot of grief as Crocodile's partner. Vivi smiled. I've already forgiven you, Robin San. You did help us in the end. She told her and Robin looked at her in shock. But, Robin started. It's okay. Vivi interrupted. Come with us, Vivi. Luffy yelled, and then they left. A few minutes later Agaram came running into the room, with 2 wanted posters. They fell on the floor as he noticed the pirates were already gone. Roronoa Zoro, wanted dead or alive, 60.000.000 Berry. And, Monkey D. Luffy, wanted dead or alive, 160.000.000 Berry. 32. Goodbyes. I was waiting for you guys. Bon Clay yelled from the crow's nest. How lovely to see you again. Bon Chan. Luffy yelled, but the rest completely ignored the poor agent. All right, we made it. Zoro announced. Yash, unload our stuff. Sanji said. Thank you a lot, guys. This is farewell to you as well. Usopp told the ducks. Take care while going home. Zoro told them. Say hi to the king and rolls Asan. Luffy yelled. Stay well. Chopper yelled and everyone waved at them and the ducks waved back. Someday let us meet again. Bon Clay yelled and waved with tears in his eyes for some reason. Wait a minute, he then yelled as he realized they all totally ignored him except Luffy. What kind of attitude is that towards your friend? Are we still friends, Bon Chan? Luffy asked, although he already knew the answer. Of course we are, Mugi-chan. Bon Clay told him. But you tricked us, Usopp yelled. Mr. Two shook his head. I did not trick you. He replied. I didn't know either. But really, that's all in the past now. Baroque works has crumbled. We aren't enemies anymore. But then he noticed Robin, who stood by herself and looked at him. Miss All Sunday. What are you doing here? He asked panicked. Calm down, Bon Chan. Luffy interrupted. Her real name is Nico Robin. She joined our crew. Really? He asked. Everyone nodded. Oh, that is so wonderful. He yelled with tears in his eyes. So even between enemies such wonderful friendship can bloom. You're an enemy too, shithead. Sanji yelled at him. Such harsh words for your friend. Bon Clay replied and covered his face with his hands, as if he was going to burst into tears again. Look, if I didn't take your ship, what do you think would have happened to it? Marines might have taken it. Nami replied. Bon Clay shook his head. Not might have taken it. He yelled. Marines would definitely have taken it. This island is totally blockaded by marine ships. Totally blockaded. Even if the king forbids the navy from pursuing you inside the country. Oh, nice interview, by the way, Mugi-chan. Thanks. Luffy interjected. They don't care about the king's rules here on the sea. Bon Clay finished. Bon Chan, you saved Mary. Luffy yelled and jumped on the ship and hugged him. Both had teary eyes. So you still see Mai as your friend, Mugi-chan? Bon Clay asked. Friend, Usopp and Chopper asked. In about a minute, all four of them were dancing while yelling. Stop joking around. Oi, Mr. Two, with the Marines blockading our ship, that means you also couldn't escape. And so, you're using us to escape safely? Zoro asked. He hit his head on the ship and fell on the ground. Bon Chan. The silly trio yelled. That's right, Bon Clay admitted. Because we need each other. It's because of the horrible times we live in. In the name of sacred friendship, let's combine our forces and fight together as one. Yeah, Usopp and Chopper yelled. Luffy just smiled. It may not seem that way yet, but you're a true friend, Bon Chan. He thought. A few minutes later, after exiting the Sandora River, the Going Merry and Swanda Express were immediately under fire. Fire! Fire! Someone yelled from a marine ship. Several iron spears flew towards the Going Merry. For some reason they didn't fire at all at the Swanda. Maybe they didn't think they were enemies, or they simply prioritized the Straw Hat ship, but in any case, all the iron spears went to the poor Mary. Luffy jumped on the figurehead of the ship. He pulled out his sword. He slashed from one side to the other, but with that he only stopped the front attacks. The ship was still hit with several spears from the other sides. Zoro and Sanji somehow repelled some attacks from the left, but the rest were unprotected. A few of them just bounced off the hull, but half of them hit. Oi, there's no way I can patch up this many holes. Chopper yelled from the men's quarters. Robin helped him by handing him planks with her hands in. Do something, guys, Nami yelled. We can only protect two sides. Sanji responded. 8 ships are too much. Usopp then aimed the cannon on the deck and fired it. It hit one of the marine ships and the mast and the rest of the ship collapsed on the ship next to it, sinking them both. Usopp, Luffy yelled. Great aim. The sharpshooter just kept gawking at his handiwork, but then he snapped out of it. Yosh, just like I calculated, he finally yelled. That's what I can do when you rely on me. That's why I chose you, Usopp. Luffy thought and smiled. Nice aim, Nose-chan. Bon Clay complimented. You did good, Long-Nose-kun. Robin added. Now that those ships are gone, full speed in that direction. Bon Clay yelled. Bon Clay-sama, a problem. One of his men yelled from the Swanda. It's the Black Cage. Mr. 2 seemed to panic momentarily. Black Cage Hina is the Marine HQ captain, who patrols this part of the sea. Robin told everyone. That's not good, Mr. 2 yelled. We need to get away fast. His men prepared to get away, but the Straw Hats showed no indication of wanting to do that. What are you guys doing? Mr. 2 yelled at them. If you want to go, just go. We can't, Luffy told him. The men on the Swanda just begged Bon Clay to escape on their own. We made a promise to be at the Eastern Harbor at noon. Nami told him. There's no time left, we need to press forward. Really, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard, guys. What possible treasure could it be worth your life? Mr. 2 yelled in panic. We're going to see a Nakama. Luffy answered him. Bon Clay seemed struck deep by those words. Immediately upon hearing them he declared that he and his men will divert the Navy's attention. The Swanda left the Straw Hat Pirates and headed south. The Navy ships soon followed them. Sorry, Bon-chan, if we somehow got near enough for me to cut up all those ships, this wouldn't be necessary, but there's no way to do that without completely destroying the Going Merry. Luffy thought, since attacking Impel Down is inevitable now, I guess I'll see you soon. The Straw Hat Pirates watched in shock and half of them cried as they saw the Swanda getting destroyed by the iron spears, while they were escaping. Bon-chan, Luffy yelled. He swore he could hear his friend yelling, Okama way, in the distance. You're always so quick to sacrifice yourself for a friend. Mr. 2. Thought Robin. I never thought. Upon reaching the agreed meeting place, they immediately heard Vivi's voice through the speakers. So Princess San isn't coming? Robin asked. Guess not. Zoro replied to her, even though it wasn't really a question. Everyone looked sad. Robin's eyes glanced at the captain. He looks disappointed, but not really surprised. She thought to herself. They started slowly sailing away. Everyone. Someone yelled. They immediately turned around. Vivi, Karu. Everyone yelled and waved at them. They waved back. She took the Den Den Mushi. I want to have more adventures. Vivi spoke through the Den Den Mushi. I want to, but I can't, because I love my country. But I wonder, if we meet again, she continued. Will you still call me Nakama? After hearing this, the Straw Hat members wordlessly lifted their left hands, with an X written on each of them. Flashback. So we learned that the enemy has the ability to mimic our looks. But we shouldn't be scared. This gives us an advantage. Let this mark show that we'll always be Nakama. With this we don't need to doubt our Nakama. Vivi cried as the Straw Hats departed. 33. Night talk or very early morning talk. Everyone, wake up, Luffy yelled. The other inhabitants of the Going Merry groaned in annoyance. Wake up, now, he yelled once again. What is it, stupid shithead? Sanji yelled at him. Why are you waking us in the middle of the night? It's not night, Sanji. It's morning, Luffy replied. It's still dark, Usopp muttered. Can't you let us sleep? Zoro yelled at him. Why are you yelling, morons? Nami shouted from the women's quarters. Well, I want everyone awake. Luffy replied. Her eye twitched, not that you could see that from the other side of the wall, but anyway. Why? She yelled. Usopp covered his head with his pillow. Well, I couldn't sleep, Luffy began. That's why you woke us up, shithead. Sanji yelled at him. Luffy shook his head. We need to talk about your training too. And your battles in Arabasta. The captain replied. Also, Robin and Chopper were already up. Luffy, Chopper is on guard duty and Robin is just weird. Zoro told him with an annoyed expression. Well, anyway, don't change the subject. Zoro yelled at him with shark teeth. Shishishi, sorry. Luffy apologized insincerely. Anyway, I also got a message from my friend Shanks. Check this out. That piqued their interest, so they finally got up and went towards him. He handed them the note. To Monkey D. Luffy. From Red-Haired Shanks. Hey Anchor. Me and the guys heard about what you did in Arabasta. And you're right, that was cool. Anyway, We wanted to hear from you, and since I never gave you the Den Den Mushi number, here it is. Hope you have one of those snails aboard. Call us soon, Shanks. Why Yonko, red-haired Shanks? Usopp stuttered. Luffy laughed. Shishishi, that's him. That's Shanks, he told them. They stared at him. Hey, Nami, come to the deck, Luffy yelled. She groaned in annoyance. Fine, she shouted. Everyone made their way to the deck to find Robin sitting on a chair next to the mast with a book on her lap. So what did you want from us, Captain San? She asked. He smiled. We're going to call Shanks. Shishishi, he chirped out. Her eyes widened. Then he ran towards the kitchen and soon came back with the Den Den Mushi that the king had given him. He sat down on the ground. He checked to see if everyone was there, and it turned out there was, except Chopper, who was on the crow's nest. He dialed the number. Moosh moosh. Luffy yelled into the snail phone. Hey, is that you, Luffy? A sleepy-sounding voice asked. Yep, that's me, Ben. Luffy replied cheerfully. Excuse me, Captain San. Robin asked. But is that Ben Beckman? Yep, the voice replied. Yaon that's me. Why are you calling so early, Luffy? Well, I couldn't sleep and I was bored. Luffy replied. Ben sighed. Honestly, you're just as bad as the captain. He replied. Want to talk to him and the guys? Yep, Luffy replied. Ben sighed. There was silence for a moment and then. Oh, guys, wake up, Ben shouted. They could hear annoyed and sleepy groans. Why are shouting, Ben? Someone whined loudly. That sounds just like Luffy. Several of the Straw Hats thought. Luffy's calling. Ben told them. They started talking amongst themselves. Luffy. Did he say Luffy? Anchor's calling. That scary kid. But everyone was interrupted by a loud crash. Tisk, tisk, tisk. I know you're excited, Captain, but you should really watch where you're going. Ben scolded. Then there was a little more commotion as some of the other members made their way to the first mate. Then someone picked up the Den Den Mushi. Hey Anchor. Yaon *. A different sleepy-sounding voice greeted. Hey Shanks. Luffy greeted cheerfully. That's red-haired Shanks, Nami thought. First Whitebeard and now red-haired. Why did you have call so early, Anchor? Shanks whined. It's like 5 in the morning. Stop calling me that, jerk. Luffy shouted. The Straw Hats cringed upon hearing that, but to their surprise, Shanks laughed. Gahahaha. Sorry. He apologized insincerely. He's exactly like Luffy, Zoro thought. It's just so tempting to call you that. Shanks continued. Since you always sink in the sea. Like the little anchor you are. Gahahaha. So does Whitebeard. Luffy shouted at him and then sighed. Stupid jerk. Shanks laughed. I guess that's right, he replied after a few moments. Hey, Luffy. A few other voices greeted. It seems Captain San is pretty popular on that ship. Robin thought to herself. Hey guys. Luffy greeted back. So, Luffy. Shanks started again. We heard what happened in Arabasta. Hawkeye's even showed me the interview. Hawkeye's. Zoro thought. Shishishi. So what do you think? Luffy asked him. It was really cool, standing between two armies and telling them you'd beat them up. Gahahaha. He continued. I can't believe it, Usopp thought. He's the same as Luffy. Shishishi. I know, right, Luffy replied. Oh, by the way, I talked to Whitebeard a few days ago. There was silence for a few moments. Really? Shanks asked. And, does he like you? No idea. Marco seems to like me though. Luffy replied. Really? Shanks whined. He doesn't like me. He's always mean to me. Ah, that reminds me. Luffy told him. Thatch survived. There was silence again for a few moments. Really? Shanks asked. Now that's surprising. But Whitebeard told me not to pursue Blackbeard. Luffy told him in a resigned-sounding voice. Then you should listen to him. You don't want to upset Whitebeard himself, do you? Shanks replied. I don't care if he's the strongest, but he is Ace's captain. Luffy answered and sighed. Well, you can always attack Impel Down if Ace gets taken. Shanks replied. Whaat. Oh, I'll do that. Luffy told him. Thought. They're talking about assaulting Impel Down like it's a normal thing. Everyone thought. Anyway, where are you now, Luffy? Shanks asked. Oh, we've left Arabasta 2 days ago and now we're heading to the next island. Luffy told him. Ah, Sky Island then. Should be fun, Shanks replied. Oh, by the way, a few years ago your brothers came to thank me for saving your life, Luffy. They did? Luffy asked. Yeah, but I didn't save your life, Luffy. I don't want to take credit for things I didn't do. Shanks whined. Shishishi. Sorry. Luffy apologized, but I didn't want them to know what really happened. So what did really happen? Zoro asked. Hey, don't interrupt two captains talking. Shanks whined. Luffy sighed. I was going to say that. Jerk. He replied. Anchor got attacked by bandits when he was 7 and he beat them all up. Shanks told them. When he was 7, everyone thought. Luffy laughed sheepishly. Yeah, but there were only like 20 of them and the leader only had an 8.000.000 berry bounty. He replied. You were 7. Everyone yelled at him. Shishishishi. Anyway, is Usopp there with you? I have his son in my crew now. Luffy told them. Dad, Usopp thought. Is it true? Someone yelled and there was some commotion. Presumably the red-haired sniper pulled the Den Mushi from his captain's hands. Usopp, are you there? Luffy then made room for Usopp and allowed him to talk to his father. Usopp told him about his mother dying and they shed some tears, and after that Usopp told him about all their adventures, to which even the rest of them listened intently, both crews. Luffy sighed. Zoro saw that and put his hand on his shoulder again. Still thinking about your dad? He asked. Luffy nodded. Hey, give me back Anchor. Shanks yelled after a few minutes. Luffy made his way to the snail phone again. So, Anchor, did you meet your father? He asked him. Luffy sighed. Yep, he replied. You don't sound too happy about it. Shanks concluded after a few moments of silence. I was a jerk, Luffy said simply. Oh, don't worry about it too much, Luffy. Shanks replied. If he cares about you, he'll try again. If not, then he probably deserves what you said. Whatever it was. Luffy sighed. I guess so, he replied after a few moments. So, I guess that's it for now, Luffy. Call us again soon, and we'll see you in the New World someday. Shanks told him. Luffy smiled. Yeah, and since you can't stop calling me Anchor, I'll have to beat you up. Luffy replied. Gahahahaha. Bye, Luffy told him. See you soon, Shanks. Luffy replied and hung up. As soon as he did, Nami came up to him and bonked him on the head. Which did nothing of course, but Luffy still whined. What was that for? Luffy asked. Why did you have to talk to him that way? Nami yelled at him. Luffy sighed. Nami, Shanks and his crew are my friends. They really don't mind. There was silence for a few moments and then. Okay, now everyone tell me how your battles in Arabasta went and what you can do now. Luffy yelled out, startling them from the peaceful silence. Zoro, you go first. Ahem. Well, I fought Mr. 1. Zoro started. He had a devil fruit that allowed him to turn his body parts into steel blades. I got pretty beaten up, but in the end I was able to cut him and now I can cut steel. That's good, Luffy replied. You'll soon be able to use flying blade attacks then. There are swordsmen in this world who can cut nothing. Right, that's the point, Zoro told him. Luffy grinned and nodded. The rest of the Straw Hats were confused however, but before anyone could ask anything, Luffy motioned for Sanji to start. Well, I fought Mr. 2. Sanji started. He had the main no mi and he used some weird ballet kicking technique. I think I was stronger than him, but he tricked me a few times and used those swans on his back for fighting, so we were pretty even. Well, it's good training. Bon-chan did seem tough. Luffy replied. Nami. Me, Nami asked. I fought Mrs. Doublefinger using this new weapon Usopp gave me. She showed her Climatact. Like you suggested, Luffy, I tested it out first, so I didn't have too much trouble using it in battle. She did have a horrible devil fruit, so she wounded me a lot. Nami finished. Luffy nodded. Still, if you used the weapon for the first time in battle, you'd probably be much worse off. Luffy told her. She sighed. Can't argue with that, she admitted. Chopper, Luffy asked. Me and Usopp fought together. Chopper told him. We fought Mr. 4 and Miss Merry Christmas I think. We got pretty beaten up. He looked down on the ground. Hey, Luffy told them. Everyone else got beaten up, so don't be ashamed. You're the ones who won after all. Usopp and Chopper raised their heads. Well, Chopper continued, the woman had this weird mole devil fruit and the man was really big and tough. They also had this gun that they said had eaten a dog devil fruit. WHAAAAT. Everyone else except Luffy yelled. Luffy just nodded. Stuff like that is possible here on the Grand Line. I heard of cannon that had eaten a sheep devil fruit. He told them. They looked at him surprised. Robin, tell us what you can do. Luffy then said. She looked at him, a bit startled by being included, but nodded nonetheless. I have eaten the Hana no mi, she started. I can sprout my body parts anywhere where I can see, but close nearby I can do that even in places that I can't see. I can sprout many different body parts, but I mostly use hands and sometimes eyes, ears or legs. Cool. Usopp and Chopper beamed. She just laughed. What about you, Captain San? Would you mind telling us about your battle and abilities? She asked after a few moments. I couldn't help but notice that you were able to defeat Crocodile pretty easily, if I may say so. Luffy looked at her for a moment and then nodded. I can do that. Some of you already know much about that, but I can repeat it. He said. First, I've eaten the Gomu Gomu no mi. It turned my body to rubber. I can take all blunt hits, unless they are very strong or hockey infused. Now, most devil fruits become ineffective when the user is affected by sea stone, but my body is always rubber. I never need to activate my ability. Everyone nodded. I'm also a master of all three forms of hockey: observation, armament and intimidation. Those allow me to sense the presence of people, their attacks, surround body parts with invisible or visible hockey armor, overpower the will of others and other things. Hockey makes me a lot stronger and harder to fight. Luffy concluded. But how were you able to even touch Crocodile? Robin asked. And why did you say that you used water to the newspaper? With armament hockey, it allows you to bypass devil fruit defenses and touch a Logia's body directly. Or in my case, punch it. Luffy replied. But why did you lie, Captain San? Robin asked. Luffy sighed. I want to appear weaker than I am, and saying I have hockey would betray my strength, since hockey users are usually very tough. Luffy answered. Ah, right, Robin, you'll have to start training hockey too. She looked at him oddly. I don't feel like explaining everything again, so ask them. Luffy told her. I'm sure Sanji wouldn't mind telling you everything I've said about hockey. She looked at Sanji. Sure, Robin Kwan. It's no problem at all, my dear. Any more questions? He asked and looked at everyone. Nobody said anything. He sighed. Now I'm bored again. 34. The island in the sky. Oh crap, Sanji yelled. Everyone looked up and saw a gigantic ship falling down from the sky. I knew that wasn't rain. He yelled. Quickly, move the ship away. What was falling down on them wasn't rain, unless you count ancient bits of wood as rain. The Strafuts made sure the ship wasn't hit and then stared confused at the sinking ship. Ah, that must have fallen from the Sky Island. Luffy told everyone cheerfully. WHAAAT. I agree with Captain San. Robin replied. Ultro, to be precise. What is floating up there is a sea. A sea, several of the Straw Hats questioned. Luffy nodded. There is a sky sea over there and an island on it. He told them. This is hard to take in. Sanji replied. But the log pose is pointing up, isn't it? Robin asked. Nami looked at her and nodded. To tell the truth, I've never been on a sky island. I don't know much about it. Robin told her then. Of course not, Nami yelled. It's impossible. Islands in the sky. The log pose must be broken. I wouldn't say that, Navigator San. Robin replied. What you should be thinking now is not how to repair that log pose, but rather how to get to the sky. Nami looked at her in bewilderment. If the log pose points somewhere, you'll find an island there. The log pose is the only thing you can rely on completely. If there is a conflict between the log pose and your common sense loses 100% of the time. She continued. But, Nami began. Nami, Luffy interrupted. She looked at him. Shanks was on the Sky Island up there. It definitely exists. Weren't you listening this morning? Everyone looked at him. Shanks was up there once. He continued. With his old captain, Gold Roger. So it definitely exists. Everyone looked at him in shock. So it's true? Robin asked. The Pirate King was the captain of red-haired Shanks. Luffy nodded. Yes, but Shanks was only a cabin boy at the time. He told them. In the next few minutes, Robin proceeded to put back together the skeleton that had fallen on the Going Merry, and scared the crap out of the weakling trio, while Usopp and Luffy jumped on the rapidly sinking ship and explored it. When they returned, Luffy jumped on the middle of the ship and opened a large paper. Skypa. Nami read and took the map from his hands. Luffy, Usopp and Chopper proceeded to celebrate, which annoyed her. Hey now, it's only a possibility. The world is full of fake maps, you know. She told them. This ruined Chopper's and Usopp's mood, but Luffy was unaffected. Hey, are you saying Shanks is a liar? Shanks said he was up there, so it must exist. Luffy told her. Maybe he was drunk and he imagined it. Nami replied. Luffy shook his head. A true pirate only drinks after the adventure. He declared and raised his fist in the air. Adventure. Yeah, but how are we going to get up there? Nami asked with a growing twitch. We'll figure something out, he replied. After arguing for a few minutes, the monster trio was put into some kind of weird diving suits made of barrels. They dived. A few minutes later, someone crashed through the door. Just who are you? Masira yelled. Are you trying to muscle in on my turf? The three looked at him. Oh, a monkey, Luffy announced. Masira stared at him for a moment and then blushed. Do I really look that monkeyed over? He asked. Yeah, just like a monkey. Luffy replied. What kind of conversation is that? Zoro asked with a sweat drop. By the way, who are you? Sanji asked. Oh, how careless of me. Masira replied. But do you really think so? You really have an eye for quality. Hey, we asked who you are. Zoro asked in annoyance. Something crashed, but the four ignored it completely. I'm Masira, the monkey announced. I'm the Salvage King. Really? Luffy asked with stars in his eyes. The other two sweat dropped. I'm Luffy and those are Zoro and Sanji. Luffy announced and pointed at each of them. We've come here from East Blue. Great to meet you. Masira replied and laughed. So, you guys are from East Blue. That's right. Luffy confirmed and laughed. But man, you really look like a monkey. Oh, you're just saying that. Masira told him. Oh, by the way, Monkey-san. Luffy asked. Masira's eyes lightened up from the praise. We'd like to get to the Sky Island. Do you know how to get there? Masira thought for a moment and then nodded. I do. Well, I don't, but Cricket-san does. We could go there together. He announced. Yahoo! Luffy shouted and raised both of his hands in the air. Ah, by the way, what's in those bags there? Masira asked and pointed at the 3 bags by the Straw Hat's feet. Ah, the stuff we found on the ship. Luffy replied. Want to see? You've been taking stuff from the ship? Masira asked in a cold, angry voice. Luffy nodded and showed him what was in the bag. But you can have it, if you'll really help us. Luffy told him and his anger disappeared instantly. But please let me keep this awesome armor. Luffy pointed at a rusty suit of armor and sword. You know, that's probably worth the most. Masira told him. Luffy pouted. But I want to wear it. Isn't it part of every man's romance to one day wear a suit of armor? He asked. Masira looked struck by his words. Man's romance, he repeated. Luffy nodded. I can't go in the way of a man's romance. Masira replied. Keep the armor. Both of the other Straw Hats' sweat dropped. Man's romance. A few minutes later, Luffy walked around in his rusty suit of armor. Masira stood on the railing of the Going Merry. So you'll help us get there? Nami asked. Masira nodded. I must always help a fellow dreamer. He replied and raised his chest. Just follow my ship and we'll get you to Jaya, where Mont Blanc Cricket lives. But first, we must get some supplies. Is there a town around? Nami asked. Her eye twitched as Luffy walked past her in armor. There's Mock Town. We can stop there, Masira told her. Yosh, let's go to Jaya, Luffy announced and raised the sword high. Masira jumped on his own ship. Why are you wearing that? Nami yelled. Luffy raised his visor. Because it's cool, Luffy replied. Her eyes darkened. You idiot! Nami yelled and punched him. The armor was already weak and shattered on contact. Luffy angrily pushed the remains of the armor off. Let's go to the stupid town already, jerks! Luffy shouted. Every straw hat on board cringed at this. Except Robin, who quirked an eyebrow. Oh shit, thought Usopp. This is bad. Guess lack of sleep isn't the only way for Luffy to get in bad mood. Thought Sanji. Zoro smirked. Now the witch will think twice before randomly punching people. Luffy stomped off towards the figurehead and sat down on it. They followed Masira's ship. What was that if I may ask? Robin asked the others after a few moments. And why is everyone so nervous? Well, Luffy is in a bad mood now. Usopp stuttered. And that's scary. Chopper nodded. Robin looked at them oddly. It's all Nami's fault, Zoro told everyone. What was that? Nami yelled with a twitch in her eye and a punch ready. Well, if you wouldn't punch people randomly, we wouldn't have to deal with a pissed off Luffy today. He replied. It wasn't random, she yelled. He shook his head. Maybe not, but to him it was. Zoro replied. He was being stupid and it irritated me. Nami yelled. He really likes armors. I don't know why, but he does. Zoro told her. Plus, even if it was, this was the first stupid thing he did today. He woke us up at 5 in the morning. Nami yelled. Zoro sighed. You're still on about that? He asked. She glared at him. Well, she began. If I may interject, Navigator-san, Swordsman-san. Robin interrupted. Everyone looked at her. I agree with Swordsman-san. Nami's face fell, while Zoro smirked. He might have waken you up for a stupid reason, but what he did afterward wasn't stupid at all. Robin told them. He called red-haired Shanks, which was a conversation which I think everyone here was interested in. Also he took your battle reports, which is a good thing for a captain to do. Did you hear how he talked to him? Nami asked her. Are you telling me that's not stupid, Robin? Robin shook her head. Red-haired didn't seem to mind. In fact, he even sounded amused by it. She told her. Nami sighed in defeat. Why are you even so nervous? Robin then asked. Yosh. Captain Usopp will explain everything. Usopp announced. Everyone except Robin and Chopper groaned in annoyance, while the other two looked at him. One in awe and the other expectantly. Luffy is usually in a bad mood when he can't sleep because of nightmares. He started. Nightmares? Robin asked. Usopp nodded. Luffy often has nightmares. I don't know what they're about, but he usually keeps calling our names. Even yours, Robin, Usopp replied. She quirked her eyebrow. If it gets so bad that he can't sleep anymore, he is in a really bad mood the whole day. He sighed. The first time this happened was on Baratie, back in East Blue. Usopp continued. A pirate named Don Krieg invaded the restaurant. Luffy barely even acknowledged the guy, but when he interrupted his conversation with Hawkeye's. Wait, Hawkeye's? Robin asked wide-eyed. Usopp nodded. Hawkeye's came to the restaurant. He was chasing Krieg from the Grand Line. Zoro challenged him and lost. He told her. She glanced at Zoro, who looked on the ground. When that happened and we thought Zoro had died, Luffy went mad and fought him for a while. Then, when he saw that he was alive, he calmed down. Robin looked shocked. Wait, Captain San fought the greatest swordsman in the world? She asked. Usopp nodded. Zoro looked at her. Evenly. He told her. Excuse me, she stuttered. They fought evenly. Well, Hawkeye's wasn't really attacking, but he was taking Luffy seriously. When he fought me, he didn't even use his black blade. When he fought Luffy, he had to. He told her. To say that she was shocked was an understatement. Ahem. Sanji interrupted. Everyone looked at him now. Marimo didn't really see it, but the battle was downright scary. How so? Robin asked. He looked at her. It was crazy. When their swords hit, it was like an explosion happened. Sanji told them. The windows in front of Baratie all shattered and all the weaklings were sent flying away. The ground cracked beneath them and the sky parted above them. Like I said, it was insane. Everyone stared at him in shock. It's true. Luffy is insanely strong, Usopp told them. But, like I was saying, when Krieg interrupted their conversation, Luffy just slashed him with his sword. He's usually so cheerful and playful, but when that guy interrupted him when he was in a bad mood, he cut him. Just like that, might have even killed him. And then he scared the crap out of everyone else. I see, Robin answered, but isn't the solution to this simple this time? Everyone looked at her in confusion. Well, Captain San got mad because of the armor, we should tell him we'll get him one when we can. Robin told them. Then she stood up. Where are you going? Zoro asked her. To Captain San, she replied. Everyone looked at her in shock. But he might yell at you. Usopp told her. She smiled and waved her hand in dismissal. She walked up to the figurehead. Captain San, she called. Hey, Robin, he asked. What do you want? So you really like armors? She said. He sighed. I've always wanted to wear one. He replied. You know, even if Navigator San hadn't punched it, it would still fall apart soon. She told him. I know, he replied, but I wanted to wear it for as long as I could. We could always buy you some armor if you'd like, she suggested. He sighed. I don't think there are many armor shops anywhere near here. Luffy answered. She turned to leave. But thanks, Robin. A few minutes or hours, don't really know, later. We're near Mock Town. Masira yelled from the back of his ship at the Straw Hat ship that was following. Both ships then anchored at the town. Luffy jumped off the ship and turned around. Hey Zoro, he yelled. Want to get a drink? Zoro smirked. Sure, Captain, he replied and jumped off. Might I also come with you, Captain San? Robin asked. Everyone looked at her in confusion since they didn't expect it, but Luffy just grinned. Sure, Robin, he replied. She went after them. Hey guys, no fighting. Don't cause any trouble, Nami yelled. Luffy turned around, shook his head. I'll fight if I feel like it, he answered. He could see Zoro smirk from the corner of his eye. What about supplies? She yelled. He grinned. We'll leave the boring stuff to you guys, Luffy replied. Robin chuckled in amusement as the navigator started to turn red in anger. 35. Mock Town. There's a lot of different people. Luffy started as they walked from the harbor of Mock Town. Seems like a fun little town. Zoro agreed. Robin nodded. This appears to be a pirate town. I'm sure it'll be interesting, she added. Luffy nodded. You bet, he replied as they walked past many different pirates. One had a large halberd in his hand. As they walked down the town, Luffy felt several familiar auras. He tensed up. What's wrong, Luffy? Zoro asked. Luffy sighed. I knew it. As soon as I talked to Whitebeard, I knew what would happen. Luffy lied. They both looked at him oddly, one from each side. Luffy sighed again. Blackbeard is in this town. And since I promised, I can't fight him, he told them. Excuse me, Captain San, but what exactly did Blackbeard do? Robin asked. Luffy looked at her. To me, nothing, Luffy replied. But he nearly killed one of my brother's Nakama. 4th Division Commander Thatch is still fighting for his life. Robin looked at him and tried to say something, but something else got Luffy's attention. An old man fell off his horse in front of them. One of Blackbeard's Nakama, thought Luffy. Who is that? Robin asked. Luffy shrugged. He fell off, Luffy replied. Even though Luffy hated Blackbeard, his hate didn't really extend all that much to his Nakama, since they had nothing to do with neither the betrayal nor Ace's defeat, since they didn't even have hockey. Yep, fell right off, Zoro repeated with a sweat drop. The man on the ground, Doc Q grunted as if in pain. He lifted his head and looked straight at Luffy. Hey, good folk, he asked, could you help me? Zoro and Luffy both sweat dropped. You just don't feel like getting up, Zoro replied in a deadpanned expression. The man grunted again. Luffy, get that side, Zoro said. Luffy nodded and they grabbed Doc Q and threw him on the horse. Oh, sorry about that. The man apologized. I'm back up. I was born with a weak body. Yeah right, Luffy thought. Now let's go, stronger. Doc Q commanded to his horse. The horse took a step forward and fell forward on the ground. The horse too, Luffy and Zoro yelled. Robin giggled in the background. Then the horse somehow picked himself up. Forgive me for being such a bother, Doc Q replied and offered a basket full of apples. I'd like to repay you with those. Would you like one? Zoro's sweat dropped. Hey, That's way too suspicious. We don't want any. Hurry up and get lost, he said, but Luffy ignored his words and just went ahead and took one of the apples. Ooh, an apple, Luffy said and took a bite. Just as he did that, something exploded in the background. Hey, what happened? A random man asked. Some guys took some apples from some weird guy and as soon as they ate them, all 5 of them exploded. Another replied. Zoro and Robin looked at Luffy, who was munching on an apple. He swallowed and then started laughing, much to their bewilderment. Shishishishi. It seems I'm really lucky then, he told the man and ate the rest of the apple. The man laughed. Exactly. You picked a dud, otherwise you'd have died on the first bite, he told them. They walked past him. Zoro sighed. Seriously, Luffy, Zoro commented. Why did you take the apple, Captain San? Didn't it seem suspicious to you? Robin asked. Luffy waved his hand in dismissal. I'm highly resistant to poison and an explosion wouldn't have killed me, Luffy told her. She shook her head. What about us? Zoro yelled at him. Ah, right, Luffy answered and gained a thoughtful expression. Then he punched his right fist on his left hand. If an explosion did happen, I'd use Gear Second and punch you away as soon as it happened. Gear Second? Robin asked. What's that? Luffy smirked. I use my rubber body to speed up the flow of blood in my body. That makes me much faster, he explained. They looked at him wide-eyed. Seriously? Zoro asked. But you're already fast. Luffy nodded. Yeah, I'm fast enough so that I generally don't need it anymore. At least against anyone in paradise, I think, he replied. Soru is more than enough for those. Soru, Robin repeated. Luffy nodded. So, you've heard about it. It's a technique high-ranking Marines use, he told her. Wee ha 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 ha. Someone laughed. They looked up and saw a very muscular man with a golden belt on a rooftop. Another one, Luffy thought. He's at it again, a random citizen asked. This is a fun town, Luffy chirped out and laughed. By the way, where are we heading, Captain San? Robin asked. Luffy shrugged. Who knows? Luffy answered. Any fun-looking bar. They walked for a few more moments. Luffy noticed the sniper of the Blackbeard pirates on another rooftop. Then he finally saw the bar he was looking for. There, he said and pointed towards a bar, which a blonde-haired pirate with a blue captain's coat had just entered. Ah, Bellamy, you're going to be a jerk today, aren't you? Luffy thought in irritation. But then another man gained his attention. It was him, Blackbeard. At the same time as Bellamy entered the bar, Blackbeard exited it. They did not share a glance. Luffy struggled to restrain himself as he walked towards the bar, Blackbeard coming in his direction. Zoro and Robin both noticed this and kept looking at him. Blackbeard and Luffy passed each other. Luffy kept looking into the ground, while Blackbeard looked at him in interest. Then, as soon as they were a few feet away from each other, Luffy lost control. For just a second, his right hand blackened. It was like a flick, but the other man noticed it. Blackbeard stopped walking. Luffy stopped too. Luffy looked over his shoulder and saw Blackbeard doing the same, however his expression seemed drastically different to Luffy's. Luffy glared at him, but Blackbeard's eyes were wide. He was sweating. He actually looked frightened. What's going on? Thought both Robin and Zoro, but didn't dare say anything. Damn, I lost control, thought Luffy, as he looked straight into Blackbeard's disbelieving eyes. What overwhelming hockey, thought Blackbeard. For a moment I thought I felt red-haired's aura. He finally composed himself and turned around fully. Luffy and his 2 crew members followed his example. What's your name? Blackbeard asked. Luffy relaxed his posture somewhat. I'm Monkey D. Luffy, he answered. Blackbeard's eyes widened. That's the guy that defeated the Shichibukai, crocodile, he thought, but I had no idea he was this powerful. Your bounty? Blackbeard asked after a few moments. 70.000.000 berry. Luffy answered. I'm sure the new wanted posters will arrive soon. Blackbeard thought. Then his bounty will be at least double that. Your name? Luffy asked. Although he already knew the answer. Marshall D. Teach. Blackbeard answered. Luffy nodded. Nice to meet you, he answered. Likewise, Blackbeard replied. They then turned around and headed each into his own direction. Damn, if I knew he had refused the Shichibukai position, I'd fight him right now. Blackbeard thought, but if I attack him while he's considering or he has accepted, the government won't like me too much. He turned his head around and glanced at Luffy, who had just entered the bar, followed by his two crewmates. And if my observation Haki is correct, he's way too strong to fight without knowing for sure. He then walked away. When Luffy entered the bar, followed by Robin and Zoro, the entire place went quiet. Whether it was because of Luffy's commanding aura or because they recognized his face, every person inside ceased their conversation and looked at the new arrival. The three walked towards the counter and sat down, Luffy intentionally sitting near Bellamy. Zoro and Robin sat down to his left. Most of the attention was still on them, but a few of the patrons started talking again. "Hey old man, get me a glass of wine," Luffy ordered. "Coming right up," the bartender replied. Zoro quirked an eyebrow at this. "Luffy, you drink wine?" he asked. "I drink whatever I feel like," Luffy answered and grinned. "Now you guys say what you want." "I'll have wine like Captain San," Robin ordered. "I'll have sake," Zoro told him. "You're the captain?" Bellamy asked mockingly as Luffy got his drink. Luffy took a sip and turned to him. "Yep," he replied simply. "How could a squirt like you be the captain?" Bellamy asked and laughed. His crew laughed alongside him. Zoro and Robin didn't react, but they looked at Luffy, wondering what he'll do. He calmly kept drinking from his glass. After the laughter quieted down, Luffy put down the glass on the counter rather loudly. Bellamy and a few of his men, most notably perhaps Sarkis, tensed up. "I haven't heard a complaint yet," Luffy answered in a low tone. "Actually, I think my crew was quite happy with me when I defeated Sir Crocodile of the Shichibukai." The bar quieted down immediately. Zoro smirked. "You defeat Crocodile?" Bellamy asked mockingly and stood up. "I've never heard a worse joke. Let me give you one piece of advice, whoever you are," Luffy continued. "Underestimating people on the Grand Line will get you killed." "Hey, are you threatening me?" Bellamy yelled. Luffy picked up his glass again and looked at him. "Like I said, it's advice," Luffy replied. This seemed to piss off Bellamy even more. "How dare you speak to our captain this way?" someone yelled. The 55.000.000 Berry Super Rookie, Bellamy the Hyena. Luffy smirked. "Is that supposed to impress me?" he asked. "He enjoys this way too much," Zoro thought and smirked. Robin started chuckling. "Captain San, you're being a bad boy," she said. Luffy's eyes widened and he looked at her in shock. Zoro also stopped smirking and turned in her direction, also shocked by her words. "What?" she asked, still smiling. "Robin," Luffy began. "That sounds even worse than bad girl." "Way worse." Robin chuckled. "That's your punishment for calling me that," she replied. Luffy pouted. "Stop ignoring me," Bellamy yelled and tried to punch Luffy, but he caught his fist with his palm. Luffy didn't even bother to face him. "Fine," Luffy replied to her and smirked. "Have it your way, bad girl." Being ignored again of course completely enraged Bellamy. He stepped back and activated his ability, which caused most of the patrons to run out of the bar. "Spring Snipe," Bellamy yelled and launched himself at Luffy. "Armament," Luffy murmured. Luffy stayed as he was, not moving an inch. As soon as Bellamy's punch hit Luffy, the force of the punch was returned to him several times over and he was blown away, crashing through the wall of the bar and flying through several houses. Zoro's sweat dropped. "Was that really necessary, Luffy?" he asked. Luffy laughed sheepishly and scratched his head. "I might have overdone it," he replied. "Might have," Zoro yelled at him with razor-sharp teeth. Robin just stared wide-eyed at the mad-shaped hole in the wall. Somewhere else on the island, Blackbeard stared shocked at an unconscious Bellamy, who was embedded into the wall of a house. Back at the bar, Luffy paid for the drinks and the three crew members turned to leave. "By the way, Luffy," Zoro asked, "who was guy we met in front of the bar earlier?" "I think that's quite obvious, Swordsman San," Robin replied. Zoro's eyes widened. "Blackbeard?" he asked. Luffy nodded. "That's him," he replied. "But let's forget about him and think about Sky Island now." He raised both of his hands in the sky. Adventure 36. How lucky we are. Hey old man, we want to go to the Sky Island. Luffy asked cheerfully as Mont Blanc Cricket woke up from his nap. Cricket looked at him for a few moments and then started laughing. Ha 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 ha, Sky Island. You guys believe in the Sky Island? He asked. Well, actually I know there's a Sky Island up there. Luffy told him. Cricket looked at him. And how would you know that, kid? He asked. Because my friend Shanks was up there. Luffy replied. Cricket looked at him for a few moments and then chuckled. Is your friend known as a liar? He asked. Luffy shook his head. I don't think red-haired Shanks is particularly known as a liar. Robin interjected. The man's eyes widened. So, Norland didn't lie about that? He asked. Luffy looked at him. Shanks seemed very clear about what he saw, old man. Luffy lied. In truth, Shanks hadn't told him anything at all about the Sky Island, only that he was there once. The City of Gold, Luffy concluded. Cricket's cigarette fell from his mouth. Everyone looked wide-eyed at Luffy. Of course, the Pirate King must have taken a lot of gold. Luffy continued. But, if it's true and it's up there, we're still going to be the richest pirates in paradise, maybe even in the New World. Nami's eyes immediately turned into berry signs and everyone else kept gaping at Luffy. Are you serious, kid? Red-haired saw the City of Gold up there? Cricket asked. Luffy nodded. I didn't expect it to happen this way. Cricket said after a few minutes. I've struggled and tried to prove or disprove my ancestors' claim for years now and you just come here and tell me. He sighed. Thanks, kid. He said and smiled. But I'll still need proof. I'll tell you how to get up there and I'll tell those idiots outside to give us a hand. He glanced outside, where Masira and his brother Shuju were arm wrestling. If you get up there safely and you can find the golden bell, ring it. Cricket continued. That will be all the proof that I need. Wait, you said your ancestor? Sanji asked. You mean Norland? Cricket nodded. He is my distant grandfather's grandfather's grandfather, or something like that, he told them. Because of his lie, our family has always been laughed at. I wanted to have nothing to do with him, but when I stumbled upon this island, I thought, this is fate. I couldn't run any longer. I stayed to settle this with my ancestor. Everyone nodded. Cricket sighed. But now after you've told me that, it seems Norland wasn't a liar after all, he concluded. Then he stood up. How did those two outside come into this? Nami asked. Cricket shook his head. They're fans of the book, he told them. Everyone's sweat dropped. I was always alone, diving into the sea to try to find the lost City of Gold, he continued. And then they just barged into my life. Claimed Norland didn't lie. Honestly, I'd have died of loneliness if it weren't for those idiots. It seems they were right too. He stood up. Listen up guys, he announced. I'll now tell you about how you might be able to get up there. A few minutes later. So, basically, we need to get underneath the knock-up stream precisely at the right moment and then it should blow us up in the air and we'll reach the Sky Ocean, if it's there of course. Nami asked. Cricket nodded. That's the theory. He answered. If the Sky Sea is up there, you'll reach it. If not, you'll die. Several straw hats cringed at this. Of course, even if it is there, you could still die if you do anything wrong. Cricket told them. Also, that ship could never reach the sky. He pointed at the Going Merry, which was anchored nearby. What's wrong with Merry? Luffy asked. Cricket sighed. Even if it was brand new, it could never reach the sky. Cricket told him. Everyone looked at him in confusion. Luckily, that's where we come in. Those guys will refit your ship, make it capable of flight. Masira and Shuju raised their hands in the air. Yep, leave it to us, guys. They announced. You didn't have to do that, Nami and Usopp thought gloomily. Nami stepped forward. Hey, do you even know what you're talking about, Luffy? Nami asked. Luffy looked at her in confusion. For starters, the log pose will set in about a day, so we can't stay here longer than that. After that, it will readapt to the next magnetic field. Right, Usopp announced, a bit too cheerfully for Luffy's taste. We won't make it. The City of Gold. Luffy interrupted and put a hand on Nami's shoulder. 1 billion berry might become a reality for us, Nami-san. Her eyes instantly turned into berries and she stopped objecting. Most of the straw hats' sweat dropped. Damn, he's good, Zoro thought. That's not the problem, Luffy. Usopp yelled. There's no telling when the knock upstream will come. It could be days, weeks, months, years even. You can't. Tomorrow afternoon, Cricket announced. If you want to get going, you'd better get ready. Usopp's eyes bulged out. You mean we're going to make it? He yelled. Well, that's unusually convenient. Luffy said. I was going to say that. Usopp replied. Whatever. Sky Island. Yahoo! Adventure. Luffy announced. But then he turned back to Mont Blanc Cricket. Oh, by the way, old man. Luffy asked. Cricket quirked an eyebrow. How will we know which direction to go? I mean, the log pose points directly to Sky Island and compasses don't work. Wait here. The man replied and took a step back into his half-house. Nami stared wide-eyed at Luffy and took a step back. Luffy sighed. What? He asked. What did you do with Luffy? She asked. Robin chuckled. What do you mean? Luffy yelled. You said something smart, Luffy. Sanji announced. Usopp nodded furiously. Zoro face-palmed. Luffy looked at Sanji with half-lidded eyes. You're both jerks. He said. He heard Robin chuckle again. Well, at least someone's amused. He told her. She shrugged. I find the way they treat their captain quite amusing. She told him. He sighed. At that moment Cricket came out of the house, carrying something covered with some cloth. He put the object on the wooden stump and pulled the cloth off it. Underneath was a small golden statue of a southbird. Everyone came over to look at the statue. Robin sat down on the stump and looked at it from all directions. Wow! Nami screamed out when she looked at it closely. Everyone's sweat dropped. Don't get any ideas, Nami. Luffy told her. I was just looking at it. She screamed at him. He chuckled. Right. He answered. She sighed. This is a southbird, Mont Blanc Cricket announced. No matter how large a stretch of land is or how much the sea tosses and turns, its head will remain pointed in a single direction. You need to capture one of those birds. Luffy raised his hand. Yes, Cricket asked. Are there northbirds and westbirds and eastbirds too? He asked. Cricket nodded. I've seen a northbird once. I've never seen one of the other two, but they exist. He answered. So, let's not waste any time and capture one. Zoro said. Yes, have fun, Luffy announced. Everyone looked at him. You're coming with us, Nami ordered. Luffy shook his head. Shishishi. No, I'll leave the boring stuff to you guys. He told her. It's also good training for you. But Luffy, Nami started. Have fun, he interrupted. Jerks. Oh, so that's what this is about, shitty rubber. Sanji yelled. Luffy laughed. Shishishishi. Well, you shouldn't be mean to your captain, jerk. He told him. Everyone turned to leave, but when Robin tried to stand up, Luffy put an arm on her shoulder. You stay. He told her. Everyone looked at him in confusion. Luffy turned around to face them and was now sporting an evil grin. They cringed upon seeing it. It'll be way too easy for them if you come along. Robin chuckled as he waved at them. Have fun, guys. As they left, either muttering curses or sulking, Luffy let himself fall backwards on the grass. When he could no longer hear them, he turned to Robin and smirked. She quirked an eyebrow. Shishishi. This should be priceless. He told her. Again you seem to know something that we don't, Captain San. She replied. He chuckled. I tried to catch a southbird once, Luffy began and was then quiet for like a full minute. He spread his limbs over the grass. Well, like I said. He then continued. It should be funny, shishishishi. You're right, kid, Cricket added, also sporting a grin of his own. Those birds are devilish. She sighed. I hope they aren't in danger. She said. Luffy chuckled again. Nah, not serious danger anyway, Luffy answered. She shook her head. By the way, Captain San, if you wanted Blackbeard gone so much, why didn't you just provoke him or something? She asked after a moment. Or you could have just attacked him anyway. Who is Blackbeard? Cricket asked, as he sat down next to them. He was following their conversation. A traitor, Luffy answered. Blackbeard or Marshal D. Teach was part of Whitebeard's crew, but he betrayed them and nearly killed one of their commanders. He's a Nakama-killing bastard, the worst kind of a man you can find on the sea. Cricket's eyes widened. Whitebeard. What do you have to do with Whitebeard, kid? He asked. Luffy looked at him. Both of my brothers are in his crew, he answered, much to Cricket's shock. But even if they weren't, I'd still hate the guy. I can't stand to even be around people like that. He pulled himself up and sat on the grass. I mean, I'd let go of anything else. But a man who kills one of his nakama, who basically put his life and trust into his hands, a man like that deserves to die on the spot. Both of them looked at him with wide eyes, shocked beyond belief at the words that came from his usually cheerful mouth. That's quite shocking to hear from you, Robin told him. He looked at her and sighed. Nakama aren't supposed to kill each other, he told her. When you join a pirate crew, you are hunted and hated by the world, so your nakama are often the only people you can turn your back to. To be betrayed by one of them, it's unthinkable. He sighed and fell back on the grass. I don't know that much about Whitebeard, but I've heard that he has only one ironclad rule. Don't kill your nakama, whatever the reason, Luffy continued. But there had to be a reason for Blackbeard to betray his crew after years of loyal service. Something that outweighed the risk of betraying Shirohige. He looked at Robin and sighed. My bet is on a devil fruit. Logia probably, and it has to be very powerful, even among the best of them. Luffy finished. He knew that was correct. Yami Yami no Mi was most likely a Logia, and it had the ability to disable any devil fruit on touch, even Luffy's, which was always on, even in sea stone and water. That's quite an impressive deduction, Captain San. Robin told him. He laughed. Thanks. He replied. But even if he really wanted the fruit, he could always have stolen it. He didn't need to kill anyone. If he had stolen it, he'd probably get punished, but he'd live. So, I guess he was planning all of this somehow. He sighed again and looked at the ground. And that's why I fear for Ace, he concluded. And in only a few weeks you'll see I was right. But, I'll prevent the worst. I swear. His arm blackened again. Robin looked at it cautiously. You're dealing with big shots there, kid. Cricket replied. Luffy nodded. How strong do you think he is? Robin asked him. Luffy shrugged. Seeing as he dared to betray Whitebeard, I'd say he's at least as strong as the average commander, but he could be even stronger. He replied. In all honesty, Luffy didn't know. When he met him in Mock Town, Blackbeard never showed his level of hockey, and Luffy was unable to sense it when they met in Impel Down in his first life. He knew that he had managed to kill his former captain, but he also knew that Whitebeard was by then nearly dead, using most of his hockey and strength just to remain alive, so he was fairly sure that he himself was stronger than Blackbeard as well, since he couldn't imagine Shanks, for example, having too much trouble with Whitebeard in such a state, but Blackbeard nearly died to him. They were silent for a few moments, but then Robin remembered something. You haven't answered my question, Captain San. She told him. He looked at her. Why didn't you provoke him or something like that? He sighed. When something like this happens, a crew's reputation is at stake. It's their job to deal with the betrayer. It'd be poor honor to do that for them. As much as I was tempted, I couldn't do that. Luffy told her. Also, I don't break promises. After a few hours, the modifications and repair of the Going Merry were nearly finished. Sanji came running towards the three pirates, seated on or near the tree stump, followed by the rest of their crew members. Zoro carried a southbird in his hands. All of them had plenty of bumps and small cuts on their bodies, but worst of all, following behind them was half the animals of the Jaya forest. Luffy pointed at them and fell over, laughing his ass off. When Robin saw the scene, her eyes widened and she failed to suppress her own laughter. Foo. I see what you meant, Captain San. Hey, stop laughing, Zoro yelled with an angry red face. Shh. Sorry. Shh. Quit that, Nami yelled. Foo. Sorry, Navigator San. Then as they reached them, Luffy stood up and released a wave of controlled Conqueror's haki. All the animals following them fell down on the ground. Luffy looked at his crew members for a few moments and then continued laughing. Stop it, Sanji yelled. Stop laughing, shitty rubber. Robin, on the other hand, stared at the fallen animals in shock. What did just happen? Was that also haki? 37. To the sky. See you later, guys. Luffy yelled and waved as the Going Merry headed towards the giant whirlpool. The cowardly trio screamed and cringed and held on the ship's railing at all times, while the 4 more monstrous members dealt with the situation in different ways. Luffy jumped around in joy. Robin looked tense, but otherwise calm. Zoro held on to the railing with a smirk on his face, while Sanji continually offered both ladies his arms, Nami more often, since she seemed scared, while Robin didn't. The bird on the railing looked panicked, as he tried to fly away, but he was bound to the railing. Then everything suddenly stopped. Why did the fun stop? Luffy pouted in disappointment. What fun? Nearly everyone, except Robin and Zoro, yelled at him. Those two just laughed. But sailing in the whirlpool was so much fun. Luffy pouted again. Better than the first time. First time? Zoro asked while several crew members either face-palmed, sighed or laughed. Yep, shishishishi. When I set sail from my home village, I accidentally sailed into a whirlpool. Luffy explained. Zoro's eyes bulged out. You nearly died before even getting your first shipmate. He yelled at the captain. Luffy nodded and laughed sheepishly. You idiot, Nami yelled. He just continued to laugh. Well, if I had died, that would be that. Luffy told her. That'd mean that was how far I was meant to go. Zoro's eyes widened after hearing this. Flashback. Let's test this sword's curse against my luck. If I lose, then that just means I was never a man who'd amount to anything special. He smirked. So, wouldn't you be ashamed if you died because of a whirlpool? Nami asked. Luffy chuckled. I'd be dead, so how could I be ashamed? He asked and looked at her. So, now what happens? He asked after a few moments of silence, but his question was answered by someone not on his crew. Hey, Mugiwara, someone yelled. I've come for your head. Ziahahaha. Luffy's fist blackened immediately. Blackbeard's laugh faltered for a moment. So, I wasn't wrong. He thought. He's definitely incredibly strong. But you didn't seem interested yesterday. Luffy yelled back, trying to make his voice sound as neutral as possible. Ziahahaha. That was before I knew you refused a Shichibukai position and got this nice bounty on your head. But I guess you didn't know. So look. Blackbeard yelled and showed 2 wanted posters. Pirate Hunter Zoro, 60.000.000 Berry, and Monkey D. Luffy, 160.000.000 Berry. Ziahahaha. Blackbeard told him. Most of the Straw Hat's jaws dropped at this. Luffy just smirked. So I guess Smoker either didn't tell them about my hockey or they didn't believe him, he thought. That's good. I almost thought I ruined my plan with that. But then his eyes rested on Blackbeard. Luffy smirked again. He wants my head, Luffy thought and grinned. So I guess that means I can kill him now. He pulled out his sword and slashed forward from the railing. Suyoi Economy, strong red wave. Luffy yelled and a huge blood-red wave traveled towards Blackbeard's pathetic little raft. You don't have a swordsman yet, Luffy thought with an evil grin. So what are you going to do, Fatbeard? Robin glanced at him. He wasn't kidding. She thought with widened eyes. That slash is intended to kill. Several other members looked at Luffy with surprise. This has never happened before. Zoro thought. Krieg was kinda similar, but this is on another level. He just wanted to shut up Krieg, but this guy. At the last possible moment, Jesus Burgess kicked Blackbeard to the other side of the raft, and as soon as he retracted his leg, the wave rushed past the middle of the raft and cut it cleanly in half, brushing his foot and destroying most of his shoe with it. Water that had been parted started to fill in. The 2 parts of the raft flew in different direction and they too started cracking from the aftershock of the attack. Soon, both parts cracked nearly entirely and soon, they were in like 10 pieces each. Blackbeard held on to one with his dear life and watched in horror at Luffy. His foe smirked and raised his sword again. No, I can't die here. Blackbeard thought. He looked nearly scared to death, haha. He knew that unless something happened, he was a goner. Hey, stop it, he yelled pleadingly. Don't do it. Luffy's eyes darkened and he gritted his teeth in anger. Blackbeard knew that he just may have made matters worse. The only thing I hate more than Nakama murdering bastards, Blackbeard, are cowardly Nakama murdering bastards. He spat out and slashed forward. However, as soon as he did, a bullet hit him straight in the head. He bounced off the bullet, but it was enough to change the direction of the slash. The wave went past Blackbeard, destroying another piece of his raft near him, but leaving him unharmed. Luffy turned to the left and glared at Oj, Blackbeard's sniper, who stood on a piece of the raft, with his gun aiming at him. At least his Nakama are loyal, Luffy thought, for now. The sniper shot him several times, preventing him from doing anything for a few moments. Then his bullets ran out. Luffy smirked at him and turned back to Blackbeard, however just as he was about to slash a third time, water exploded beneath them. They were blown into the sky. The 4 Blackbeard pirates made their way to their captain and together they sat on the biggest piece of wood. Ziahahaha, I'm still alive, Blackbeard yelled. I'm pretty lucky, aren't I? The resident champion, Jesus Burgess scowled. Captain, how can you take this so lightly? He yelled at his captain. You were this close to dying and it's all your fault. Ziahaha, but I'm alive, Blackbeard shouted again. I guess it wasn't my time to go yet, Oj. Exactly, the sniper replied quietly. Oh, and thanks, Oj. Blackbeard told him. The sniper nodded. Honestly, Captain, Burgess scolded, if you knew he could do that, why did we attack him on the sea? But I didn't know, Blackbeard replied. Anyway, forget about it now. We're all fine. Ziahahaha. Whatever. Meanwhile, on the Going Merry, which was sailing towards the sky, Luffy sheathed his sword and clenched both of his fists. He stood on the door of the Going Merry. Damn, Luffy thought. I failed. That was my last chance to get rid of him before he got ace. Why didn't I just ignore Whitebeard's request and kill him right there in the town? He gritted his teeth. When he finally raised his head, he saw both Zoro and Robin staring at him. He hardly even noticed the position the ship is in. Robin thought, this isn't just some policy of his. This seems personal. He took a deep breath and forced a smile on his lips. He looked around and noticed the rest of his Nakama, much less calm than the 3. Unfurl the sails, Nami ordered. This isn't just a column of water. It's the ocean, a vertically flowing current. Yosh, Luffy yelled and grinned genuinely now, Blackbeard forgotten for a bit upon seeing the determined navigator. He proceeded to do as she asked. She proceeded to explain some things about the phenomenon, but Luffy just focused on what he was doing. Who's this ship's navigator? He heard her say. He grinned. It's Nami Swan. Sanji sang out with a heart in his eye, but didn't do his noodle dance. That might be a little dangerous to do in such a situation. Nami continued yelling orders as Luffy jumped down from the mast and pushed his hand in the air. To the sky. 38. Weird night. Luffy coughed up a lot of water. He looked around and noticed a lot of clouds around the ship. So cool, he yelled out, startling his slowly waking Nakama. What is it, Luffy? Nami asked. Luffy offered her his hand and she accepted. He pulled her up and then pointed at the distance. The sea of the sky, Nami, he told her. I told you it exists. Her eyes widened as she looked around, white surrounding her from all sides. She took a step back. Wow. She whispered. He grinned and looked around. He saw more disbelieving faces. He chuckled. Welcome to the sky, guys. He announced. Everyone started laughing in joy. It's real. Usopp and Chopper gasped. Luffy looked at them with a stern look. Didn't you have faith in your captain? He asked in a scolding voice. They looked at him with guilty expressions, but then he chuckled and jumped towards them, taking their hands. Sky Island, he exclaimed, and they started dancing around the deck. The next who got up was Robin, who looked around the ship and couldn't believe what she saw for a moment. Then she just smiled. The last to get up were Zoro and Sanji, and that was because they competed who would get up first and kept preventing each other from standing up. Oh, Luffy exclaimed and suddenly let go of his 2 dancing partners. I hope no one is stupid enough to go swimming here. If you do, you'll fall back down on the Grand Line. Nami's eyes again widened and she took a step back. Luffy looked at her with an annoyed expression. Really? He asked her and sighed. Robin chuckled. Luffy, she started. He put an arm on her mouth. Zoro's eyes widened. Nami, if you finish that sentence, I'm leaving the next enemy to you, he told her. Okay. She nodded meekly and he let go of her mouth. Zoro chuckled as she remained quiet. Hey, don't talk that way to Nami Swan. Sanji yelled at him. Luffy turned to him and looked at him with a confused expression. What way? He asked. Sanji glared at him. Don't order her around, he told him. Luffy blinked a few times. But I'm the captain. That's what I do, he told him. Sanji opened his mouth to say something, but he closed it. You're right, Luffy. You're the captain, Zoro told him with a smirk on his face. Sanji glared at him. You can order us around, especially the Dartbrow over here. Shitty Marimo, Sanji replied. Shitty cook, Zoro retorted. You want to fight, stupid swordsman. Sanji yelled and put his face right into Zoro's. You can't match me, stupid Dartbrow. Zoro yelled back, pushing him away. Shut up, Nami yelled and punched both of them on the head. Hi, Nami Swan, Sanji replied in his beaten-up state. Stupid witch, Zoro growled. Robin clapped her hands a few times in applause. Thank you, Robin, Nami told her and took a small bow. My pleasure, the archaeologist replied and giggled. Then they suddenly heard a splash. A huge fish rose from the water and jumped right at the Mary to take a bite. Gear third, Luffy announced. Everyone looked at him, wondering what he'd do. Luffy took his right hand to his mouth and bit into the thumb. Then he took a deep breath and blew lots of air into it, and to the surprise and shock of his nakama, the hand grew in size until it was as large as that of a giant. Sanji dropped his cigarette. Luffy then, ignoring his gaping nakama, grabbed the approaching fish by the neck and stopped it. Then he just threw it into the distance. He turned around and saw his still gaping nakama. Hello, he said and waved the now deflated hand in front of their faces. What was that, Luffy? Zoro asked. Luffy smirked proudly. That's Gear third, he answered. Since I'm rubber, I can enlarge my bones by putting air into them. How is that possible? Usopp asked. Luffy shrugged. I'm rubber, he answered. Everyone blinked a few times. Then another, but larger fish also tried to attack the Mary, but Luffy just punched it away casually. As the fish flew away, another much smaller fish fell onto the deck. Robin picked it up. Would you say this is a skyfish? She asked. The strange fish Norland mentioned in his journal. Since the sea has no bottom, they must have evolved various adaptations to survive. Luffy walked up to her and took the little fish out of her hands. Looks tasty, he muttered. He ignored Robin, Zoro and Nami as they talked about the topic further and just handed it to Sanji, who quickly cooked it. Luffy took a bite. This is so good, he announced. Nami sighed and slapped her head. We weren't done, you know, she told him. Try it, Luffy told her. She took a bite. You're right, she chirped out. It's delicious. I'm glad you like it, Nami-san. Sanji thanked her. Let's eat a big one too, Luffy announced. Sanji shrugged. Just find one, he told him. Luffy turned to Robin and handed her the plate. She looked at him. You caught it, so try it, he told her and grinned. Nami's eyes widened again and she took a step back. You're sharing food, she screeched out. Shishishi, you're so funny, Nami, Luffy told her. She blinked a few times. I'm funny, she asked with a confused expression. Luffy nodded. Nami imitation, he announced. He put his hands in front of him as if trying to push something away and gained a comically shocked expression. He took several steps back. Nami's eye twitched. Oh no, what did you do with Luffy? Luffy exclaimed in a fake Nami voice. Robin nearly spat out the fish she was chewing as she barely contained her laughter. Usopp and Chopper, however, were already rolling on the floor. Hey, I don't talk that way, Nami yelled and slapped him. Luffy then suddenly sensed a relatively strong aura approach them. He looked into the distance and saw a ship getting destroyed. What is it? Nami asked. Luffy looked at her. Someone is approaching, he told her. In a few moments, a masked man who seemed to ride on top of the cloud sea appeared in front of them. Oh, you there? Sanji called. What do you want? I shall reject you, the man declared. He wants a fight, Sanji told them. Zoro took out his katana. Fine by me, he replied. The man then slammed into Sanji, sending him flying into the ground. He jumped up and kicked Zoro, who was just about to slash him. He jumped back in the air and attempted to kick Luffy into the ground, but Luffy sidestepped and avoided him. Armament, Luffy murmured. He stretched out his palm and slapped the man away, sending him flying into the distance. Damn jerk. He muttered and his armament disappeared. Then another man appeared out of the sky. He rode a weird, pink bird with purple circles. He wore a shiny silver armor and he had a silver lance as a weapon. Weird night, Luffy thought and grinned. The man landed on the railing of the ship. So it seems you didn't need my help, he said simply. What is going on? Nami asked. She glanced at the two members of the monster trio, who laid on the ground. What are you two doing? Don't blame them, Nami. Luffy told her. It's just that the air here is much thinner than down below. Right, now that I think about it, Zoro confirmed. Nami looked at Luffy. How come you aren't affected? She asked. He grinned. Training. He replied. Are you blue sea dwellers? The knight asked. Yes, Luffy answered. Nami looked at him oddly. Blue sea dwellers, she asked. Luffy looked at her. This is known as the White Sea and the sea below is known as the Blue Sea, he told her. He looked at the knight. Right. The knight looked at him in surprise. You seem to know some things about this place, he replied. Were you here before? Luffy shook his head. No, but I've heard about it from someone. Who was? He replied. The knight quirked an eyebrow. Shanks, apprentice of Gall D. Roger. The knight's eyes widened. So you've met him? Luffy asked after seeing his surprised expression. The knight nodded. How is Roger doing? Is he well? The knight asked. Luffy sighed. I'm afraid he's gone. Luffy replied. He became the Pirate King, and then he was executed. The man's face fell visibly. That's too bad. He and his band were a good bunch. I'm sorry to hear they're gone, he replied. Oh, but they're not all gone. Luffy told him. He looked up in surprise. The crew also looked at Luffy. Most of them are still alive. But how, Captain San? The government said they were all captured. Robin interrupted. Luffy shook his head. They weren't captured. He told them. Everyone gasped at the revelation. The Pirate King surrendered. Luffy ignored the shocked expressions and continued. Silver's Rayleigh, Shanks and Buggy all still live, he told them. Nami and Zoro looked at him with wide-eyed expressions. Why, you're kidding, right? Nami asked. Luffy looked at her and shook his head. Zoro blinked a few times. Buggy was one of the Pirate King's nakama. He asked after a few moments. Luffy nodded. A cabin boy, like Shanks, he answered. Both of them shook their heads. Every herd has a black sheep, Sanji offered. They both nodded repeatedly. Who's Buggy? Robin asked. Everyone looked at her. An East Blue pirate, Sanji told her. A nobody basically. Somewhere on the Grand Line, a certain red-nosed pirate got the sudden urge to murder someone. Ah, by the way, what's your name? Luffy asked. I'm the Knight of the Sky, Gonfall. And this is my partner Pierre, he replied. So, seeing how you don't need my help, I'll take my leave. Wait, Nami yelled after him. He stopped. What do you mean help? This is a service, he answered. This is a dangerous land. I make my living as a knight for hire. I give this whistle to whoever wants my help and if you blow it I come to your aid. I hope this doesn't sound wrong. But for a fee of 5.000.000 extols, the knight added. Everyone's sweat dropped as the fee seemed outrageously high. I think we'd like to take the whistle, Luffy answered. I can't be everywhere at once after all. I see. The knight replied. Here you go. He threw him the whistle and Luffy caught it. Since you told me about Roger's fate, I'll give you one service for free. The knight replied. But every next service will cost 5.000.000 extols. What are you talking about, old man? Sanji asked. What's this extol thing? Gonfall gasped and sweated. You mean you didn't come here from High West? He asked. Everyone looked at him oddly. But you must have at least stopped by one or two islands. Hold on, Nami interrupted. You mean there are other ways to get up here? And what do you mean one or two islands? There are more of them. You mean that you, Gonfall began. We rode the knock upstream. Robin interrupted. His eyes widened again. You mean that monstrous current? He asked. To think that there are still souls brave enough to do that. I knew it wasn't a normal route. Nami cried. She grabbed Luffy's cardigan and shook it. I thought we were going to die. If we had gathered more information we'd have an easier trip. It's all your fault. But it was fun, wasn't it, Nami? Luffy asked cheerfully. Gonfall resisted the urge to sweat drop. Have you lost any of your crew? He asked. Nope. Luffy replied cheerfully. I see. The knight replied. But the other routes would not have been so merciful. Here you either all die or all survive. After a few more minutes of conversation, the Knight of the Sky left on his bird/horse partner and the Straw Hats continued to their destination. 39. Angelic Hosts. HESO. A blonde-haired girl dressed in a pink outfit with white wings on her back greeted with a somewhat sad smile. The Straw Hats noticed her and all turned around to look at her. Sanji immediately had a heart in his eye. Sue, come here, the girl called, and the little white fox that Luffy and Chopper were playing with ran towards her. Are you from the Blue Sea? She asked. Everyone nodded. Yes, we came from down there. Luffy replied. Do you live here? Yes, I do. She replied. Welcome to Skype's Angel Beach. She noticed the big melon that Luffy had on the ground. Would you like to drink that? She asked. He nodded. She motioned for him to give her the melon and he complied. The top of a konoshu is as hard as steel, she explained. She pulled out a small knife. But you can easily cut through the bottom. She turned the melon around and cut a small hole in the middle. She put a straw in it and gave it to Luffy. Here, she said and smiled kindly. He took it and did a sip. This is as good as I remember it, he thought. So good, he yelled out. It wasn't an exaggeration. The juice in the melon was really good. Is it really so good? Usopp asked. Luffy nodded and gave it to him. Usopp tried it and confirmed Luffy's words. Luffy looked up to the girl. Could we take a few of those? He asked her. She smiled. Sure, we have a lot here. She replied. But, oh, where are my manners? I'm Canis and this is Sue, a cloud fox. Should you need anything, please let me know. About that, Sanji began. The look in your eyes has pierced my heart. Nami pulled his ear and pulled him away. OWW, Nami Swan, is this jealousy? He asked in his love-dazed state. Humph, you wish. She told him and he deflated and started sulking on the ground. Robin chuckled upon seeing that. He instantly jumped back up. Is perhaps my Robin Kwan jealous? He asked and started twirling around her. Not at all, Cook-san. She's all yours. Foo, she told him. He deflated again, having been refused by the both of the ladies. Che, hopeless Dartbrow. Zoro muttered. A vein popped on Sanji's head. What was that, Marimo? He replied and stood up. I said you're hopeless, shitty cook. Zoro told him. And then they started fighting. Usopp and Nami sighed. Chopper watched in awe and Robin ignored them. But then, Luffy started laughing his full-blown laughter. Not his trademark, shishishi, but a roaring laugh. Everyone was startled by this and they looked at him. Even the two who were fighting. What's so funny, Luffy? Usopp asked in confusion. Luffy finally stopped then and got up. Shishishishi. Sorry, it's just that they look like a quarreling couple. Everyone blinked a few times and after a while they were all on the ground, laughing their asses off. Even the stoic Robin had a good laugh and Canis actually joined them. Why you? They both seethed at the same time. Ha 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 ha, look, they're totally the same. Usopp told them. I'm not the same as the disgusting Marimo. I'm not the same as the perverted love cook. They both yelled at the same time. See, Usopp's right. Luffy cheerfully replied and fell down laughing, along with the rest of his crew. Luffy, both of them muttered darkly and jumped at him, attempting to beat him up. Luffy of course dodged or blocked every move while laughing all the time. Hey guys, stop fighting. Nami yelled after finally picking herself up. Hey Nami, Luffy yelled. Look at this. Everyone looked at him. Stop it, shitty captain. Sanji yelled. Luffy gained an evil grin as he dodged his kick. The two rivals paled upon seeing it. He put both of his hands together with only his index fingers extended and made them almost touch each other. Your cooking is shitty, Dartbrow. Luffy imitated with his best Zoro voice, whilst moving his right index finger. Not as shitty as your swordsmanship, Marimo. Luffy imitated in his Sanji voice, whilst moving the left index finger. Then he put the two fingers together, rubbing them against each other, while imitating kissing sounds. And everyone was on the ground once again. Ha 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 ha. Luffy. Ha ha ha. My stomach. Usopp laughed. The rest weren't much better. The two rivals started attacking more and more furiously, and all the while, Luffy was laughing. The least affected was Robin, who, while laughing uncharacteristically long and loud, for herself, was still standing. While she didn't have anything against a good laugh, she knew that with their stamina and Luffy's endless supply of immature jokes, this could take a while. So she diffused the situation the only way she could think of. Foo 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 foo. Stop being a bad boy, Captain San. She told them. The reaction was immediate. Everyone quieted down and was gaping at her like a fish in disbelief. Did I hear that right? Nami wondered aloud. Are you feeling sick, Robin? Usopp asked. Doctor. Doctor. Someone call a doctor. Chopper yelled. Why did Robin Kwan say that? Sanji asked in a puzzled expression. Zoro and Luffy, who had already heard her say that, just stared at her. There was silence for a few moments and then. Shishishishi. My crew is so funny. Luffy laughed and then took the melon from the ground and started drinking from the straw. Everyone sighed, finally freed from their painful laughter. Kanes-san, Hesso. Someone yelled from far away, startling everyone. Hesso. Father. Kanes yelled back. Her father was using some sort of device to travel on the sea cloud and Nami noticed it. Hey, what is that thing? The thing he's riding on? She asked. Kanes looked at her. Oh, that's a waiver. Kanes replied and smiled. Waiver. Nami repeated. Hey, I'm sorry. The father yelled. I'm stopping now. And stop he did, right in the nearest tree, while nearly hitting some of the crew. Is everyone okay? He asked. Everyone's sweat dropped. What about you? Zoro yelled. Hey Luffy, didn't you bring something like that from the ocean floor? Nami asked Luffy, who was drinking from his melon. Yes I did. Luffy put the waiver in the same bag as his poor armor. A few minutes, waiver riding and conversations later. They sat down on the sofas, cloud sofas, in the living room of their hosts. Ah, but we're so rude. Luffy suddenly exclaimed while they were relaxing in their seats. We haven't even introduced ourselves. Everyone looked at him. The guy with the long nose is Usopp. Luffy began and pointed at Usopp. It's Captain Usopp, he announced. You mean Vice Captain when I'm asleep? Zoro reminded him with a smirk and he deflated somewhat. That cool-looking reindeer is Chopper. Luffy announced and pointed at him. Bastard, I'm not happy even if you compliment me, jerk. Chopper replied while dancing his awkward little dance. Everyone's sweat dropped. That guy with green hair and scary face is Zoro. He said and pointed at Zoro. Shut up. He complained. That guy with the funny eyebrow is Sanji. Luffy announced and pointed at him. Kanes-chan, I'm at your hey what did you say? Luffy ignored him while Zoro chuckled. They nearly started a fight, but Robin broke them apart. The mean-looking redhead using the waiver is Nami. He said and pointed at the white sea. Mean-looking, everyone repeated. And the mysterious-looking girl is Robin. Luffy said and pointed at Robin. She quirked an eyebrow. Mysterious-looking, Captain San? She asked with a somewhat wide-eyed expression. He nodded. You're mysterious, Robin, he replied. Kinda like those Ponglamp stones you're searching for. Poneglyph. She corrected him. Right. He nodded. And I'm Luffy, he said with a big grin and pointed at himself. Kanes smiled at their introductions. It's nice to meet you all, she told them and smiled. Kanes-san, Robin began after a moment of silence. Could you perhaps tell us about the dials you've mentioned earlier? A few minutes and a basic explanation of dials later. Hey, Kanes, Luffy began after listening to her explanations and seeing her demonstrations of dial use. She looked at him. A man attacked us down below on the White Sea. He said he was going to reject us. Does that have anything to do with dials? She looked down for a minute. There is a war going on here on Skypia. Well, nothing has happened for a while, but it soon will. She started. Her and her father's faces fell. There are 3 types of dials that are used almost exclusively for combat. Axe, impact and reject. She stopped for a moment. Axe dials are used for cutting your opponents, while impact deliver blunt force to the opponent. Reject is a stronger version of that dial. Kanes continued. Reject dials are said to be 10 times stronger than impact ones, but they harm the user. It's unlikely for a normal man to survive wielding a reject dial. Everyone's eyes widened. Luffy gained a thoughtful expression. So then, it's unlikely he was actually going to use an actual reject dial. Sanji asked. That's right, Kanis replied. Even if he somehow found one, it's doubtful he would use it. The reject dial could be very useful in Marineford if it comes to it. Luffy thought. Then he raised his head in determination. Yosh, I've decided, he announced. I want a reject dial. Everyone looked at him in shock. Kanis and her father paled at his words. Why, you can't be serious? Kanis stuttered. Didn't you just hear what I said? Luffy looked at her with a determined expression. But I'm rubber, blunt attacks can't hurt me, he told her. She looked at him oddly. I ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi, one of the devil fruits, he told her after a moment. She looked surprised. And blunt damage means like a punch, right? Punches don't hurt me. I suppose that could work. Sanji spoke with a thoughtful expression. Well, Kanis began again. Even if it wouldn't harm you, there's still the matter of finding it. It's very rare. It's possible nobody has it. Luffy deflated somewhat, but after a moment he regained his smile. Well, maybe we'll get lucky, he announced. There was silence for a few moments. Hey, where is Nami-san? Sanji, who stood on the balcony, asked. Everyone looked at him oddly. Shouldn't she be using the waiver? Usopp asked. Father, will she be okay? Kanis asked. He put down his fork. Yes, Kanis-san, I also feel a bit unsettled, he replied. Why? Luffy asked. What's wrong? Kanis turned to him. Here on Skypia, there is a place you must never ever set foot on under any circumstances, she replied with a serious expression. Everyone looked at her. A place where you must never set foot on? Usopp asked. Why is that? It's sacred ground, Kanis told the. Sacred ground, Robin repeated. Kanis nodded. We call that place the land where God resides, Upper Yard, she told them. Luffy stood up. The place where God resides, he repeated. A place where we must never set foot on. She nodded. By God, do you mean the God? Chopper asked. God lives here. She nodded with a troubled expression. Luffy looked at his crew members and his eyes met Robin's. It seems they both noticed her change in demeanor. Yes, because Skypia is God's land. It's ruled by the Almighty God, Enel, she replied. Almighty, Luffy thought and smirked. Quite an ego problem you have there, Enel. In the corner of his eyes he could see Zoro also smirking. God Enel knows everything that goes on in this world. Kanis continued. He wondered if she actually believed that herself. Everything? Usopp asked. Everything, Kanis confirmed. What, even right now? Chopper asked. He's watching us right now. Humph. God, Zoro huffed with an unimpressed sounding voice. Zoro, you don't believe in God? Chopper asked. Zoro shrugged. Dunno. I don't care if he exists or not, he replied. It never mattered to me one bit. Not that I have anything against anyone that wants to believe. Have you seen this God, Kanis? Luffy asked. No, I've never seen him. Kanis replied, waving her hands in front of her face. We can't set foot on Upper Yard. Luffy suddenly walked up to the balcony. When he turned around, he had stars in his eyes. Is that so? He asked with a voice barely containing excitement. A place where we must never ever set foot on. Usopp cringed, while Chopper looked at him in awe. Zoro and Robin seemed amused. Hey, Luffy, Usopp yelled and started shaking his cardigan. What are you thinking right now? Listen to what she's saying. Robin glanced at Kanis and her father, who surprisingly didn't seem to be offended one bit. They actually had resigned, somewhat solemn expressions. What is the punishment for entering? Robin asked after a few moments. You will not return alive, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, the father told them. The cowardly duo present cringed at this. It's sacrilege, so God will punish you. I'm sorry. How? Luffy asked. They looked at him bewildered. Excuse me, Kanis asked. Luffy looked at her with a thoughtful expression. How does God punish those who break his laws? Luffy asked. Then suddenly as she started to speak, he felt a familiar discharge of energy in the near distance and a man dying. Never mind. Luffy interrupted. Lightning, right. Everyone looked at him in surprise. Conus and her father seemed shocked. How did you? She started. I just felt someone die on upper yard by lightning. Luffy interrupted. Felt? Conus asked with a wide-eyed expression. You have mantra. Luffy nodded. The crew looked at them with surprised expressions. It's known as observation haki on the blue sea. Luffy said after sensing their confusion. Never mind that, Sanji yelled. It wasn't Nami Swan, right? He said and gritted his teeth. Luffy shook his head. She hasn't entered upper yard. She's afraid though. She'll probably return here soon, he explained. Everyone sighed in relief. Wait, Zoro exclaimed. You can sense all the way up there. Luffy nodded. Good observation haki users have a long range of vision. Somewhere in the sky, Enel smirked. Yahahaha, how interesting. He exclaimed. A mantra user from the blue sea. Would you like some apples, Kami-sama? An attractive woman asked and offered him a golden plate full of them. Oh, you are just too kind. Yahahaha. 40. The jerks that protect and serve. You're the 7 illegal entrants from the blue sea, right? The captain of the crawling weirdos, known as the White Berets, asked. We are here to bestow heaven's judgment upon you. The two hosts were shocked by those words. Illegal entrants. Pagaya, the father of Conus, asked. The Straw Hats stared at the group of enforcers. Illegal entrants. Luffy asked. Conus and her father looked at them. Is it true? Pagaya asked in fear. There's no use denying it. The enforcer chief announced and pulled a few pictures from his pocket. They turned out to be pictures of the Straw Hats. The Heaven's Gate lookout, Amazon, has taken these pictures with her vision dial. No, that isn't possible. Pagaya defended them. That must be some mistake, Captain McKinley. They aren't bad people. Why is he calling us illegal entrants for? Sanji asked. Robin looked at him. Well, he's probably referring to the billion extols we were each supposed to pay. We certainly didn't do that, she told him. But that old woman said we could pass without paying. Usopp defended. Chopper confirmed this. It'll do you no good. The captain of the enforcers replied. Please, no excuses. Just accept your guilt. However, there is no need for worry. Everyone looked at him. Illegal entry is a minor, class 11 crime. The man continued. Once you've received your punishment, you can return to the status of peaceful tourists. Well, why didn't you say so sooner? Sanji answered. I'm still not too happy about it, but what's this punishment? You simply need to pay 10 times the entry fee, which would be 70 billion extol for all 7 of you, the man answered. If you pay immediately, your crime will be immediately erased. How much is that in berry? Usopp asked. Berry, the man repeated. The currency of the blue sea, right? I believe 10.000 extol equals 1 berry. So that means you're required to pay 7.000.000 berry. Sanji's cigarette dropped from his mouth. That's too much, Sanji yelled. Do you know how much food I could buy with that? I second that, Luffy interjected. Sanji glared at him and then looked back at the captain of the enforcers. Why do we have to pay such a ridiculous amount when we risked our lives to get up here? Sanji finished. McKinley sighed. In that case, you should have just paid the entry fee of 700.000 berry. He told them. That's still too expensive, Sanji yelled with a twitch in his eye. Now let me warn you. The captain began. We White Berets act under direct orders from the priests. Refusal will increase the severity of your punishment. After a while, the Straw Hats dispersed, though everyone except Sanji stayed close. Sanji went to bring a few of those melons. The enforcer then noticed the ruined waiver that they possessed. That waiver there seems to be broken, he announced. If that's your doing, that's a class 10 offense. Destruction of Sky Island property by Blue Sea dwellers, that is. No, I'm sorry. Pagaya interrupted. That's actually their property. Their property? McKinley asked. That's quite suspicious. There aren't supposed to be any waivers on the Blue Sea. If it was stolen, it would be class. We didn't steal it, Luffy interrupted. We found in a ship that fell from the White Sea. That's highly questionable, McKinley replied and sighed, but I guess it's possible. Then Luffy ran towards Usopp, who was trying to catch a fish with his fishing pole. This should be fun, Luffy thought and smirked. Usopp then seemed to have caught something. He tried to pull it, but it was too much for him. A good catch, Usopp. Luffy commented and patted Usopp on the back. Usopp smiled and continued pulling. Luffy and Chopper joined to help him pull it up, but when they finally succeeded, the fish jumped out from the sea, freeing itself from the fishing pole. The fish headed straight for Kanes with its mouth wide open, the intention obvious. Kanes screamed in fear. Zoro jumped in the air and hit the fish with the back of his sword and then kicked it down into the ground. Everyone ran towards the fish and looked at it. What is that? Usopp questioned. Another funky fish, Chopper answered. It was about to eat Kanes. So this is another type of skyfish? Zoro questioned. Ah, excuse me, Pagaya interrupted their conversation. Thank you for saving Kanes-san. Father, that fish, Kanes began. Well, McKinley announced in a reprimanding tone. This is a rare type of skyfish. Its capture is prohibited. You have violated the law protecting rare species. That a Class 9 crime. Luffy smirked again. Robin noticed that. How is that a crime? Usopp asked. It was attacking Kanes. McKinley laughed. Zoro, did you finish it off? Usopp asked. Zoro shook his head. No, hit it with the back of the sword, he replied. Usopp sighed in relief. Then if we release it, there's no harm done? Usopp asked. He kicked the fish and it woke up and started moving its tail. Yosh, Luffy announced and drool started leaking from his mouth. He stretched over to the fish, getting Usopp out of the way. Then he opened his mouth wide. There, you can't deny now that you were trying to eat it. McKinley announced, a bit too happily for everyone's tastes. But, contrary to everyone's expectations, Luffy blew some air at the bump on the head of the fish. He then turned around and looked confused at McKinley. Almost everyone freaked out because of Luffy's uncharacteristic behavior. As they did so, Luffy smirked smugly. Is he mocking me? McKinley thought. Robin also noticed his smirk. Was he planning this? She thought with widened eyes. Zoro, however, was less than pleased by the man's constant crime accusations. He gripped his katana. Standing around listening to this guy go on and on about bullshit crimes is pissing me off. Zoro spoke in a low tone. If he doesn't stop it. Usopp grabbed Zoro and restrained him. Your behavior right now was quite threatening. McKinley began with a smirk. Such behavior is deserving of Class 7 crime. Sorry, Luffy interrupted with a smirk of his own. Everyone looked at him. But you have no way of knowing what Zoro would have said. For all you know, he meant to say that he was going to slap you with a banana or give you a tissue. Everyone of the crew stared wide-eyed at Luffy. He was gripping his weapon. McKinley defended. Luffy shook his head. Zoro's white katana is from his friend. Luffy began. He often touches it to make sure it's still there. But, McKinley tried to say. So you really have no reason to punish us. Luffy finished with a huge mocking grin. We're still on Class 11. McKinley gritted his teeth in anger. Every straw hat eye that was present was bulged out. How can Navigator-san and Cook-san possibly think this man is stupid? Robin mused with a slightly parted mouth. Ah, guys, Luffy asked with a large grin as he turned around. What did I say? Nothing, everyone muttered while waving their hands in front of their faces. Something's fishy here, Chopper yelled. He's trying to make us look more guilty. Usopp nearly got a heart attack. Chopper, he yelled at his friend. Don't say things that'll make it worse. But we can't do anything with them around. Chopper yelled. Usopp suddenly got a light bulb. Anything, he repeated. Then he punched his fist into his palm. Then let's not do anything. Let's take a nap. Everyone except Robin laid on the ground and started snoring. Both their friends and the captain's sweat dropped, making such a contemptuous sound at the serene Angel Beach. McKinley began once again. You are guilty of environmental pollution. This is a Class 6 crime. Oi, you can't even snore. Usopp yelled in disbelief. These laws are ridiculous, Robin thought. Zoro gripped his katana. Usopp jumped in front of him to prevent him from attacking. Yes, but, Luffy began with another mocking smirk. We weren't actually hurting or disrupting anything. You were disrupting us, McKinley said and pointed at himself and their two hosts. Kanes and her father didn't seem to mind us sleeping. Neither did their pet, Luffy replied with a smile. McKinley again gritted his teeth. What about us? He yelled and pointed at himself and the officers far behind. Luffy grinned. You're enforcers. You haven't come here to relax. Luffy continued. McKinley's face reddened in anger. You've come here to make us look guilty. Everyone looked at Luffy in shock. Like I thought, Robin concluded in her thoughts. He knew all along. Hey everyone, Sanji yelled from the nearby forest, carrying lots of melons in his hands. What are you doing? Oh, Sanji, Chopper started. Wait a minute, Nami yelled from the distance, interrupting them. Nami Swan, Sanji yelled with a heart in his eye. You're safe. Luffy, don't make these guys mad. She yelled as she approached them with the waver. Luffy rolled his eyes and sighed in irritation. He didn't reply though. Nami, use your money to pay the 7.000.000 berry illegal entrance fee. Usopp yelled. That's great, she replied. So this can be settled if we just pay a fine. Then her eyes darkened. 7.000.000 berry, that's. She crashed into McKinley. Way too much, she yelled with shark teeth. Luffy face-palmed and Robin as well as Zoro chuckled at his reaction. What crime level are we now? Zoro asked Kanis as Nami returned the waiver to her father. Class 5, obstruction of a public servant. Kanis answered. Good, it's still only 5. Usopp sighed in relief. It's not good, she yelled. It's death sentence. WHAAAT. After a few minutes, I'm telling you, Luffy. It's too dangerous, Nami said. Luffy just smirked and put a hand on her shoulder. City of Gold, Nami. He told her. But it's too dangerous, she yelled. A billion berry, Nami. He said. No, maybe not just a billion. Maybe billions. Her eyes turned into berry. Everyone's sweat dropped. Please run away, Kanis yelled from the distance. Surrounding her and her father were the white berets. Hurry. That's enough, young lady. McKinley began. Know that if you aid these criminals, you could become one yourself. He smirked. For repeated abusive language towards us and the obstruction of a public servant, you are sentenced to cloud drifting. He announced. But I said it was an accident. Nami yelled. Zoro shook his head. Really, Nami, couldn't you have reacted a bit less violently? He asked. She glared at him. You guys have nothing to talk about. She yelled. I bet you did all sorts of crimes while I was gone. Actually, Robin began. Nami looked at her with widened eyes. Captain San had the situation well under control until you came, Navigator San. What? She yelled and pointed at Luffy who seemed to be getting annoyed. Him. Yes, him, Navigator San. Robin confirmed. Nami sighed. So, this is all my fault? She asked. Yes. Everyone answered at the same time, except Sanji who didn't say anything. That's way too blunt, Nami yelled at them. Arrest them, McKinley yelled. The enforcers raised their bows and fired some unusual-looking arrows. Everyone somehow dodged those arrows, but it became clear that hitting them was not the real intention. The arrows created some sort of cloud paths in the air. The enforcers used the clouds in combination with their skate-like dial-powered footwear to gain an advantage. They each carried 2 blades. Luffy just sat down and let his Nakama deal with them, occasionally dodging a swipe aimed at him. A few minutes later, Luffy, Sanji and Usopp watched into the distance as the giant speedy crab took their ship and the rest of their Nakama with it. Luffy glanced at Kanis who wore a guilty and sad expression. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.